mute. Please unmute it only while speaking. This will help us conduct the session very smoothly. Thank you very much.
Recording in progress.
Members of the organizing committee, Dr. Ramvish Karma, Dr. KJ Sriram, Professor Ranjana Agarwal, Professor Pradeep Raman Charla, and Dr. Abhay Pashilkar, distinguished speakers, dignitaries, and participants from India and from across the world. Namaskar. Wish you all a very, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of CSIR, the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, I welcome you all to the second day of our event named CSIR India, an innovation hub for global sustainable development. CSIR has been contributing significantly to the industrial, societal, economic growth of India for more than 8 decades now. It has helped the country overcome many, many challenges and crises. CSIR has been immensely contributing to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Today's session, CSIR India, an innovation hub for global sustainable development, aims at briefly showcasing our S&T interventions and solutions that contribute towards UN's SDGs. The first day of the event was held on 2nd September 2023, which focused on sustainable utilization of resources and on specific themes. Focused were green energy and mobility, chemicals and sustainable materials, and exploration and sustainable unearthing of treasures. Well, today we would be focusing on the societal and rural development efforts of CSIR. We will showcase our interventions through 8 presentations on 2 topics, namely affordable healthcare for global society and rural development and traditional knowledge from hamlets to industries. Each scientific session will be moderated by a chair and a co-chair. There will be about 7 to 8 minutes discussion and Q&A break after every topical session. The meeting will conclude today with a panel discussion, which would focus especially on the innovations for global sustainable development. The session will be moderated by Dr. Abhay Pashilkar, our director from CSIR National Aerospace Laboratory, which would summarize and discuss and deliberate on the future priorities and significance of the international cooperation for global to meet the global sustainable agenda of the UN. With this brief introduction, we now begin with the first topical session, which is on affordable healthcare for global society. It will be chaired by Dr. Vinay Nandikuri, our director from CSIR CCMB, the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. Dr. Vinay is a very, very well-known molecular biologist who has contributed immensely to delineating the signaling networks in Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the causative agent of TB. He has over 80 research papers in international journals of high repute. He holds prestigious J.C. Bose Fellowship. He is an elected fellow of all the 3 prestigious science academies of India. With this, I hand over the platform to Dr. Vinay Nandikuri. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So today, what we are going to talk about is affordable healthcare. In this context, I want to bring in genomics and how genomics has changed the way even the healthcare is going to have currently and is going to be what is going to happen in future. So genomics is one of the things that has become essential for identifying novel biomarkers and determine genetic basis for the rare genetic disorders. Once you identify such novel biomarkers or identify the mutations that are associated with rare genetic disorders, one can actually use the information towards coming up with better diagnostics. In the past 5 years, the genomics per se has revolutionized how we approach the problem. The costs of sequencing have come down from thousands of dollars to less than $1,000 in the last 5 years. The way it is going, it may be looking like around $200 to $250 in about next 2 to 3 years. If that happens, it is now going to become central to how we diagnose the problem, how we address a problem, how people are going to be given healthcare going forward. So given this particular background on how genomics and other things are there, it is going to be the central theme to the first two topics, or the first two seminars that we are going to be presenting today. One on sickle cell anemia, the second on the cancer biomarker discovery. The remaining two are actually related to, in a very straightforward way, to the affordable healthcare, medical devices. Medical devices are very important if you realistically want to come up with, figure out the problem when it comes to health. And the remaining last two topics would be on, focused on medical devices, both from the academic perspective as well as industrial. So with this is our overall theme, and I would come in every now and then about summarize the topics summarize the talks once they are done. We'll start our seminar with Dr. Chandak. Dr. Chandak is actually a physician scientist and is a colleague of mine. He has he's going to talk about sickle cell anemia, but he has a long-standing interest in many other pathogenic diseases, complex non-communicable diseases like diabetes, pancreatitis, and metabolic syndromes. And he has contributed in a strong way to many of these issues, published major papers. But for today, he's going to talk about his passion for the last 5 years, sickle cell anemia. And in this context, I just want to state that he has principally responsible for screening approximately 2.8 million patients, or 2.8 million people across multiple states in India, to identify the people who have sickle cell anemia disorder. So without much ado, I would give it to Dr. Chandak.
Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, thank you, Dr. Vinay, for an introduction of what I have been doing for last several years. As Dr. Vinay said, that today I'm going to talk about the development of a comprehensive model for the holistic management and prevention of sickle cell anemia. Very quickly, sickle cell anemia, many of you might be aware that it's a genetic disorder. It follows an autosomal recessive inheritance, and it principally occurs because of a mutation in the beta globin gene, which replaces glutamic acid with valine. And that's the reason why the RBCs, they sickle whenever they are exposed to a low oxygen environment. And these sickle cells, when they pass through the vessels, then they got destroyed, and because of which all these complications like pain crisis, severe anemia, and recurrent episodes of infection and hospitalizations occur. Unfortunately, India happens to be one of the countries where sickle cell anemia is highly prevalent. It is specifically prevalent in about 11 to 17 states. So what was the motivation? What was the motivation when we started thinking about sickle cell anemia? I had earlier worked on sickle cell anemia, and what we had observed that there is a very peculiar phenotype in the Indian patients. They have a milder phenotype than the Africans, and we had investigated that it was related to a different genetic constitution, which led to high fetal hemoglobin levels, and there was high co-inheritance of alpha thalassemia, which indicated that the high fetal hemoglobin level doesn't allow the sickle hemoglobin to form these tectoids, and that was the reason for milder variant. There were variable response to hydroxyurea treatment, which was the only drug till few years back. And we did find that there is a lower doses of hydroxyurea, which is able to treat most of the patients. There were various peculiarities in clinical presentations. Some of the features identified in Europeans, Africans, Americans were not there. And most interestingly, even within India, we found that there is a regional heterogeneity. So this comprehensive sickle cell anemia mission was conceived at CSIR, and I was offered to lead this program. This was a 7 CSIR institutes program. I'm not talking about the other program, but the major objective was to reduce the burden of sickle cell anemia through multi-pronged approach and improve the patient quality of life of the patients by early diagnosis and proper treatment. As any comprehensive approach would require, we decided to screen the subjects at every level, right from population level to high risk adult sickle patients. We did antenatal screening for majority of pregnant women. We also did the neonatal screening to avoid any of the kids who might have been skipped because of the mother's antenatal screening. And with all these, we were able to offer the cascade screening, identify the carriers, and then counsel the carrier parents to offer them prenatal diagnosis, screening, and genetic counseling. This is just a rough model. We utilize the approach or the existing health sector approach with NHM and other places. We went to schools, we utilized Anganwadi workers, Asha health workers, and the approach that we took was to have the preliminary information through the school principal, then take a team of people, screen them, have their anthropometry and other parameters done, and then do a solubility test, then confirm that by electrophoresis, and then counsel those patients accordingly. This, in nutshell, is the brief approach that we were taking. Once the individual is identified as a patient, that is taken towards a treatment and clinical counseling, then hydroxyurea treatment and regular follow-up. But more important part was identification of the carriers, particularly in the families. And there were different strategies that we were trying to approach. But suffice it to say at this point of time that where the idea was to avoid the marriage between the two carriers, and if they are married, then offer them the concept of pre-pregnancy counseling or prenatal diagnosis and genetic counseling. This is a summary of what we could do in last 6 years time throughout 4 states, actually in Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. We could screen close to 30 lakh or 3 million individuals, which spread across all the age groups. We covered thousands of schools, and we also took the help of thousands of Anganwadi centers. Overall, this allowed us to understand that what kind of approach needs to be taken if a disease has to be controlled and eradicated finally. The learning curve was that we understood that an early diagnosis with proper supervision improves the quality of life, because if we identify early, then hydroxyurea treatment can be given to the children as early as 9 months of age, and with a proper follow-up, these kids can have very little organ damage and the quality of life is much better. Second is that we felt that there was a need for a cost-effective, high-throughput screening system which can help expedite the whole thing. And lastly, but not the least, that genetic testing followed by prenatal diagnosis and genetic counseling can only remove the disease from the society. When we looked at the approaches for screening, found that the conventional approach which we had also used was to look at these subjects, have a screening with solubility test, then go for an intravenous sampling, look for an electrophoresis picture, and then finally confirm by HPLC. There are two other methods which are available. One was strip based, which didn't need all of these, and one method which we developed subsequently. What we realized that there is a big lacunae between the collection of blood sample to the molecular testing, which is the final confirmation of any diagnosis for a genetic disorder. We simply developed a technique by which, using a dried blood spot, we could straight away do a PCR amplification, and using an arms PCR technique followed by agarose gel electrophoresis, in the one tube, single tube test PCR reaction, we were able to identify the heterozygotes as well as the homozygotes, which was published as a patent very recently. Sorry for this busy slide, but you trust me that we have used this particular test for close to 10,000 samples. We have done a validation with HPLC, Sanger sequencing. And finally, we find that the specificity and sensitivity is greater than 99%. Actually, specificity is almost 100%. We try to compare that where do we stand with this test, whether this test can be a clincher for reducing the burden of sickle cell. As I mentioned, that if we use, whether we use conventional or strip-based test, a genetic confirmation is still required in order to confirm the diagnosis and start the treatment or give an option of prenatal diagnosis and genetic counseling. If you focus on the conventional methods, there is 10 to 15% false negatives. There are requirement of venous blood sampling, which leads to poor compliance, and the cost is something like 300 to 400 rupees. Compare it with the strip-based test, which is largely with very good compliance, but it is very low throughput because it requires 10 to 15 minutes per test, and its cost is also 300 to 700 per sample, depending on two specific ones, hemotype SC and sickle scan. Our test, which was whole blood PCR based, where we finally concluded it into taking a finger prick blood and putting on the specific card, which is then dried blood spot, and the high throughput experiments could allow us to analyze 96 samples in 3 hours, and then which means that about 300 samples can be analyzed in a day, and that's a molecular confirmation. So we propose this model where whichever screening method we use, whether it is population based or newborn or antenatal screening, this whole process can be done through this whole blood PCR. There can be regional genetic testing centers which can be linked to various places for the collection of dried blood spot. And hopefully this can lead to a proper counseling as well as prenatal diagnosis and genetic counseling. So to summarize, under this CSIR mission on sickle cell anemia, today we have achieved a screening of almost 3 million children. We now have the absolute idea about the prevalence. It's a 10% carriers and 1% patients. We also have identified a hidden burden, which is 10% of these sickle cell patients are actually sickle beta thalassemia, which also needs to be looked at. We have developed this molecular test, which is a novel molecular test, a patented technology, which we think will be a game changer for doing a rapid and robust screening. We've also developed a severity score since we have close to 3,000 patients on whom the clinical history, biochemical parameters, their clinical course, everything is available, and we are doing the follow-up for last 3 years. We have developed a severity score which is based on the Indian system because the other system doesn't work since we have the phenotypic heterogeneity and clinical features and complications are also very different. And last but not the least, that it is very important in this era, as Dr. Vinay also mentioned, that we should be working on the predictive and precision medicine. So we haven't left the research component. We have worked on identifying novel genetic loci and novel proteomic markers. And interestingly, we are trying to look at the proteogenomic markers, which will establish the causal relationship between the genetic and the protein markers that we identified. We haven't left the most important component of network expansion. We have been engaging with anybody who is who in sickle cell anemia throughout the country and also globally. We have participated in various programs, international programs, Global Alliance for Sickle Cell Disease, National Alliance of Sickle Cell Organizations. We have engaged with government hospitals, medical colleges, All India Institutes of Medical Sciences, NGOs, patient support groups, largely in 4 states. We have a significant presence at this point of time. And this is the most exciting part, of course, that just in February this year, the Prime Minister of India, Honorable Prime Minister of India, announced the sickle cell anemia eradication program. Although we will not like to take the credit for the whole thing, but clearly this program of CSIR has definitely influenced this decision. And we think that using our tested strategy of multiple screening strategies, there is supposed to be an approach of screening 7 crore people in next 3.5 years. And we think that using this strategy of whole blood PCR, we can actually make the difference using this Make in India approach. We already have an experience of working on 4 states. We are already working with the other states and the NHM and other agencies. We think that with this approach, there will be a possibility to eliminate sickle cell anemia disease in India. And we are also interacting with international partners, as I mentioned, and we have also developed this test, which can subsequently go outside and can also be used for very rapid and robust screening. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take. Thank you.
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Chandak, for clearly outlining the problem that we have in India with respect to sickle cell anemia and having a talking about the diagnostic that is basically developing the diagnostic that is going to make it affordable for people to find out about sickle cell anemia. The next speaker is Dr. Shantanu Chaudhary, and he is going to talk about Indian Breast Cancer Genomic Atlas. Shantanu Chaudhary is a professor at CSIR Genomics and Integrative Biology Research Institute at Delhi. He heads the Pan-India Breast Cancer Genome Program, the first large-scale patient tumor sequencing project in India. His research interests include understanding how telomerases influence tumor immune cell signaling and promote immune evasion. He's got his fundamental work from his group on how non-duplex DNA structures impact biological mechanisms are widely used. Shantanu was awarded Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award in Biological Sciences, widely considered as the topmost Indian award, science award in India. He is a fellow of all the science academies in India, and he's a fellow of senior fellow of DBT Welcome, Trust India Alliance, and he's an editorial board member in many journals. Shantanu, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Nandikuri. This is a great opportunity to share something that is in a work in progress, and in some ways we started a little less than 2 years in November 2021, and the motivation, I think, behind a program of this scale is, about 20, depending on the region in India, the women's cancer, and about 15 to 25% of women's cancer is breast cancer. And in some areas of India, especially triple negative breast cancers, have a very high incidence, and the age of presentation is very relatively lower than what is seen across the globe, while the global percentage of one of the most aggressive type of breast cancers is triple negative. The global percentage is about 15 to 18%, 12 to 15%. India sees almost close to 30% in some of the major hospitals. So breast cancer definitely is a big challenge for India. And what we also have noted, along with clinicians across India, that many diagnostics that have been developed outside India using patient information from populations other than Indians have at times shown very limited success, and therefore has limited in ways that we have been able to use the enhancements of or the advances of genomics when it comes to Indian patients. With these things in mind, CSIR launched a program for 1,000 sequencing of 1,000 Indian breast cancers of patients from across India, different hospitals, multi-institutional program, with one major objective, so that patients, clinicians, researchers can use the advances of genomics. And as Vinay had mentioned, as the cost of genomics drops more and more, this is going to be equitable. And if research on Indian population is not done, we will be limited in taking these advances to our own patients, Indian patients. And in some ways, it is going to impact what happens across the globe. I think at United Nations, it is a focus to ensure that there is equitable distribution of advances of science and technology. And this is one big step, a major step by CSIR in that direction for covering many ethnicities, and I'll come back to this point a little later in my talk, of people across India, and looking at their patients and observing or doing large-scale molecular characterization. The idea is to, have information, clinical information, and molecular information, use these correlations to draw ideas or draw points of intervention that could be used for informed clinical decision making, and eventually for more guided or more improved therapy for breast cancer, which, if not for each patient, for each particular subtype or molecularity of the disease, can be addressed specifically using specifically tailored interventions. With this in mind, this program needed to get across and develop clinical partnerships across India. I am a basic scientist with interest in cancer research, so I approached clinicians across India. This is a starting map of where we started a few months back, about a year back. We went to hospitals like Tata Memorial Center in Mumbai, which is a major cancer hospital, one of the highest footfall cancer hospitals in India, and with more than about 18 lakhs or patients per 1.8 lakhs patients per year that they see in cancer. So, and also All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi, then Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute Research Center in Delhi, then Max, Apollo. These are hospitals which are major hospitals across India, then Kolkata, then Bangalore. So we are covering about few different corners of India. This came together and we developed a common SOP, or how we want to progress on this work. And I'm going to, in this next few minutes, I'm going to present a very brief snapshot of where are we today, what was the major points that we wanted to tick in terms of collection of samples, and what we really wanted to do with the samples, and how far have we progressed so far. This is more like a status report. Now, the idea was to understand and find actionable biomarkers from multi-omics profiling using the first 1,000, and obviously one has to increase the numbers in follow-up studies, and generally use this as a hypothesis seeking experiment, which involves deep analysis before one can come and discover molecular biomarkers which may or may not be similar to what has been discovered in other populations, and we see early shoots of some differences that appear to be very India specific, and we will have opportunities of talking about that later. So with this in mind, we went across and said that we will try to cover India across with different ethnicities, because when we talk about precision, it is also about ethnicity in some ways. Precision comes from going to the ethnic backgrounds, in this case, the ethnic genomic backgrounds of people, and from there in trying to understand what could be the underlying issues that contribute to a disease, and what are direct contributors, what are partner contributors, what needs to be intervened. These are exercises that most countries are doing, and we needed to fill this very important gap in India for a sustainable development of our own medicine. CSIR took this big step, and I'm very happy to discover this under the banner of CSIR today for making this possible. So idea was to take treatment naive patients. This came across from a conversation which happened over weeks or months in some cases, where doctors came together and we discussed, and we finally decided that we will go for patients who have tissue resected from patients before they have received any treatment. Then the standard of care is followed, which is dependent on the subtype of breast tumor. And after a follow-up of at least 3 years, we record the response to therapy of people who have come from different backgrounds and visited these hospitals. Now we take this tissue and do molecular characterization. I'll come into talk about the details of this characterization soon. And also collect blood for cell-free DNA And cell-free DNA allows one to have developed tests in future which can be based from draw of blood instead of actual and invasive biopsy. So it's a relatively non-invasive process of detection, which is becoming more and more common across the world. And these are experiments. These are cell-free DNA was an angle introduced into the study with that in mind. So once you have that, and you have the clinical annotation of the patient in terms of how the patient responded to standard of care, the idea was to integrate these informations for every patient and then make architectures of analysis which are directed for which is specific for every patient. So this exercise was integrated to go back to the clinic with follow-up and then do a validation cohort to understand whatever we have understood, how much of that is applicable across patients whom we are seeing in future. So the plan is to do about 1,000 to 1,200. So far we have 8. Now it is about 10 hospitals across India. More than 30 clinicians and scientists were in the starting consortia. The numbers have increased since then. So the key objectives the headline objectives were whole genome and transcriptome data at a fairly high depth for Indian breast cancers to make a landscape of genetic alterations, differential gene expression signatures from the transcriptomes, validation of identified mutations in not only from the tissue but also from the collected blood and from cell-free tumor DNA, immune and metabolic markers from the tissue that we are collecting along with patient follow-up, and then together all bring this across to make a map which could be connected to the response of the patient, so responder versus non-responder. And one important angle that we have kept right from the beginning, and we have developed organoids from the same patients. These organoids are available for others to use, so that you can use that all the genomic characterization that has been done for every patient. These are tumor organoids developed for each patient and are more and more people are using this more and more nowadays for drug screens and other biological experiments, because organoids seem to sort of have that attributes of the disease or attributes of the disease tissue are better captured in organoids in some sense. So this is also something that we are doing in the program, and we are distributing this to interested people for carrying on further research along with all other information that we collect on this. So the potential outcomes that we envisaged were disease subtyping and classification based on multi-omics profiles, prediction of biomarkers, prognostic, diagnostic, predictive, deriving insights of disease biology, better understanding of cancer immune interactions. So far, what has happened is about 10 hospitals across 6 major cities and a couple of other small cities have come across, and we have started following the same SOP, the same logistics. It is very important that the tissue is collected, stored, and transported under very similar conditions, which are amenable for highly depth analysis of sequencing and other experiments. So far, we have collected more than 500 breast tumor along with matched adjacent or blood for germline correction, so that the somatic mutations are evident. Whole genome sequencing at a relatively high depth, more than 70x depth for both normal and whole genome, or normal and tumor tissues have been done. Transcriptome has been completed for almost more than 300 pairs of tissues. More than 200 pairs we have analyzed, and some of this analysis is throwing very interesting insights into what could be India specific, what could be coming from patients which have a different ethnicity, and what are common across what other studies across the globe. With that, thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Shantanu, for that excellent talk on the way we are going to look at triple negative breast cancers and the discovery of novel biomarkers, which will take us, and also we get information of India-specific mutations that are there, which are present in the breast cancer. With this, we would go to the third talk, which is on by
I think there is a question in the chat.
I thought we are coming to all the questions at the end. Is it not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will go to the third speaker, which is Dr. Sanjeev Soni, who's working on as a senior scientist, a senior principal scientist at CSIR CSIO in India, which is at Chandigarh actually. And he holds a PhD degree from IIT Rupa. And presently he's pursuing research in the domain of plasmonic photothermal phenomenon for biomedical applications like plasmonic photothermal cancer therapeutics, plasmonic photothermal sterilization, and photothermal modulated drug discovery, etc. His other research interests include development of visible near infrared light sources, biological heat transfer, biophotonics, optical properties of nanoparticles, and medical robotics. He's going to deliver a talk on CSIR's R&D in medical instruments and devices for the society. Dr. Sanjeev Soni, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Nandikuri. So I'll be just presenting in next about 10 minutes the contribution of CSIR research and development in medical instrumentation for the societal applications. So the outline is like I'll be discussing about few diagnostic and therapeutic devices which have been developed here by CSIR, and including the assistive devices, few modalities based on imaging, some biomaterials and implants, and also the standards and calibrators for these biomedical devices, as well as I'll also talk about the knowledge sharing which we do through the management development programs with the national as well as international community. So the core competence is there in CSIR for the development of various medical instrumentation, which includes like electronics design and control, the precision mechanical design, optical design, the various design and analysis for engineering domains, the biomechanics, the photothermal phenomena, machine vision, and design of implants through biomaterials, etc. So one of the flagship contribution of CSIR is towards the development of a medical linear accelerator, which is used for radiotherapy for treatment of cancer. So in the 1980s, CSIR, we developed a 4 mega electron volt linear accelerator, which was like commissioned at about 3 national cancer hospitals. And after successful commissioning and use of these machines, we also developed a 6 mega electron volt medical linear accelerator, which was further commissioned at 4 major national cancer hospitals across India. So till now, more than 1.5 lakh cancer patients have been treated using this radiotherapy using LINAC device. And also we have developed something known as the portal imaging device, which is basically just to use to ensure the accurate delivery of the radiotherapy treatment. So here we just compare the plant beam with the delivered beam. And regarding other therapeutic devices, recently we have developed a neonatal blood transfusion device, which is mainly used for the blood transfusion in the neonate, because whenever there is a severe jaundice condition, then there's a need for the blood transfusion. Until now, it has been done manually, but now this has been automated. And apart from that, we have also incorporated few additional safety features like the air bubble detection, clot detection, etc., to make this intervention more safer for the neonates. And also in CSIR, we have investigated this laser and stone interaction for tuning these laser parameters so as to have the tune protocol for this laser lithotripsy. Further, we have also developed in CSIR ultrafine hollow membranes, which are of micron size, and these can be used for a variety of applications, including that for the removal of toxins for the hemodialysis, etc. And in CSIR also addressed the need of society during COVID. So in that period, we developed a few ventilators which were in very much demand. And so these were based, one of the ventilator was BiPAP, and it was based on the closed loop control with various features which can be connected to oxygen units as per the requirement of patient, and these were validated and certified through the international standards. Similarly, we also developed one oxygen enrichment unit, which was based on the hollow fiber membrane technology, and it was able to provide about 30 to 40% oxygen enriched air with the adjustable flow rates as per the requirement of the patient. And we are also working recently in the area of plasmonic photothermal phenomena, wherein we have developed a novel sterilization concept. We have patented it, and it basically allows us to have sterilization of surgical tools within just 10 to 15 minutes of total cycle duration at a comparatively much lower temperatures, around 60 to 70 degrees Celsius, and at atmospheric pressure. Whereas the conventional autoclaves, which require about 45 to 60 minutes of complete cycle. So this is a novel development at CSIR, and which will be taking up further for the scale up. We also develop a variety of affordable light sources, indigenous light sources, which can be used to get a particular desired wavelength band for use in the photobiology, photochemistry, or the biomedical applications. In one of the case, like near infrared light source, which we had developed, and it has been successfully tested for removal of this elimination of solid tumors using plasmonic photothermal therapy. And we have also tied up with the industry, and in the collaboration of industry, we have developed various xenon and halogen lamp sources which can be used for these biomedical applications. Further, in the area of diagnostic devices, we have a IoT-enabled colposcope, which is basically used for the examination of cervix cancer, wherein we can use the bandpass filters of various colors and to come up with a particular marcation of the region of interest, which can be a tumor. Further, for the surveillance of elderly and disabled persons, one of our lab which has come up with a wearable device. It's a watch kind of thing, and which is able to accurately monitor the blood pressure, blood sugar, heart rate, blood oxygen, as well as body temperature as per the standard norms. And this data can be easily sent to a cloud, which can be further used by a clinician or the patient itself. In terms of the thermal imaging modalities, we have come up with a software to basically diagnose the compartment syndrome, which is a relatively life-threatening situation wherein we may lose a particular tissue. And it has been tested preliminary onto about 50 patients. In CSIR, we have also developed clinical chemistry analyzer, which can be used to test the blood parameters and all. And one of the major contribution of CSIR is in the development of a cephalometric analysis software, so which is used mostly by these dental surgeons for orthodontic and maxillofacial applications. And this software is available free of cost for the hospitals as well as academic institutions worldwide. And till now, we have about more than 7,000 downloads of this software, which is being used in about 18 countries. Regarding in the area of rehabilitation, we have a wearable glove kind of thing, which can be used for the rehabilitation of a patient. Apart from just rehabilitation, it also basically measures the various parameters like the motion as well as force data, which can be used to further tune the rehabilitation protocol as per the requirement of a patient. We have also developed a portable reading machine for the visually impaired people, so which can be configured to read the basically printed text, e-books or e-news in English and other regional languages. We can also read the multi-column documents to perform the seamless reading. In the area of assistive devices, we have some robotic-based solutions for the rehabilitation of people who have weak lower limbs, which includes the exoskeleton device, the unweighing system, as well as some biofeedback system. Similarly, we have developed wheelchairs, which can be operated either through the head gestures or through the finger gestures, and can be used by the respective people in the society. We also have developed some games which act as a functional virtual environment, especially for the kids, so that these can be used for the various rehabilitation applications. Apart from these virtual environment, we also record various aspects of the rehabilitation using a variety of sensors which are incorporated in certain boards and stands, and accordingly these can be used to tune the rehabilitation specific to a person. CSIR has also expertise in the design and development of a variety of implants, for customized implants for these patients, it has been developed. So there we also have the implants of like variable porosity to mimic the bone. And so we have a 3D metal printing facility in-house available with us. Further, these implants, these can also be coated with some bioactive materials so as to improve the adhesion of the tissue onto these implants. And so we have like certain materials like hydroxyapatite and some bioactive glass, which can be used to promote the antibacterial effect as well as to improve the adhesion for these implants. So some of in one of the lab, they have used even the dried raw fish scales to synthesize these materials. In the area of standards and calibration, so we have like one of the CSIR lab is available. They have developed variety of calibrators for defibrillator as well as for the infusion these devices. So where they basically do the traceability of flow for infusion pumps. CSIR has also like started some work in the area of robotic surgery, where we have developed master slave kind of configuration, which can be used by the surgeon, and corresponding robot at the patient side can be used to perform this. So this work is still in progress. And in the last slide, I'll conclude that whatever we are doing in the area of development of biomedical devices, this is being shared with the national as well as international community. So under the Ministry of External Affairs of Government of India, there is a program known as ITEC, Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation. So in the area of biomedical devices, we have been sharing our knowledge since 1994 onwards, and wherein we have completed more than 60 plus courses involving more than 700 participants from 50 plus countries. So these courses are offered in the area of like operation, maintenance, and calibration of biomedical equipment, the policies on biomedical devices, IoT-based solutions, as well as for the ophthalmic equipment. Further, within the country, we are doing these management programs for the Indian Armed Forces. Apart from that, the CSIR labs are also contributing towards the pre-dispatch inspection and condemnation of biomedical equipment for the state as well as the central government hospitals within the India. So thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, for giving an overview on the medical devices and the CSIR's contributions to it. Next, we are going to have Mr. Ravi Prem is going to talk about medical instrumentations. He is a mechanical engineer with an MBA from France. He has 36 years of research experience and experience in business and P&L of engineering business for and other things. He believes in innovative, focusing on achieving results in highly competitive environment that demands continuous improvement. He has implemented many modern management concepts to build growth and sustainable organization through TOC implementation, lean management, strategic sourcing, and supply chain management, and business excellence model. He is currently working as the Chief Operations Officer of Forbes Company Limited, India Engineering Company, part of the Shapur Palonji Group. He is responsible for 3 business verticals, namely cutting tools, industrial automation, and medical devices business. Can you please go ahead, Mr. Ravi? You're mute.
Thank you, Dr. Vinay. And I think, Dr. Soni has touched upon the topic which actually I'm going to discuss, and this is interns been received from CSIR Chandigarh, because they did the development, and we are the people who are bringing this technology to the masses. Let me introduce quickly the company. We are the part of Shapoorji Pallonji's group, which is employing close to 35,000 plus people, $7 billion US, over 150 years of experience, multiple businesses, right from construction, infrastructure, oil and gas. Forbes is the part which was a part into cutting tools, industrial coding, automations, and medical implants, which is probably the youngest business. We started the technology transfer arrangements with the CSIR to make medical implants to the masses. As we speak, 80% of the implants are still being imported, and those are all conventionally manufactured, not the 3D printed. The quality of the implants, longer lead times, and of course the affordability in particularly 3D printed or patient-specific implant is still a challenge for the Indian population, and that's what was the idea and because of which we started and decided CSIR to be a partner with us. As we speak, we have the medical implant business, which is patient-specific, and of course, related to the hip, that is what we are bringing in. The respiratory devices, so we have non-invasive ventilator, ICU ventilator, oxygen concentrator, and CPAP. And of course, since we are into cutting tool business, so that's the medical business which we are into. I'll focus this discussion more on medical implant side because that's where actually the CSIR has helped us. So the focus area for us is the patient-specific implant, spine cages, augments, hip implants, knee implants, and of course the tooling related to the surgeries. These are the few implants which we did, and these were not only one. This one of the case for the Chennai patients which we did. Part of this, again, I think Dr. Soni touched upon this, but now this is not the same, but similar cases of 3 such surgeries which we have done pan-India. We also build now the jigs to have the precise cuttings of the infected portion. This is again one of the latest case which we did in one of the Delhi hospitals, 17-year girl suffering from the pelvic cancer. I will try to touch upon, though there is a technology available. Opportunities in terms of the market is import dependent. So there is, of course, the big opportunity from a sales point of view. A broad market base, merit over the conventional implant. It can be customized. It has the capability and ability to have bone and tissue in growth. Obviously, the challenges is customers and doctor awareness is one. Regulatory approval is another part of the story which we are trying to overcome. And the cost sensitivity, since it is 3D printed, there are technologies which are getting matured internationally so that the products can be done on a mass scale or the multiple implants can be produced on the same platform. So these are the few areas which are still making it difficult to go to the masses. Obviously, when we talk about in terms of a development point of view, this is something which need to be done together. So there are 3 parties: one, the research, the doctors, and of course there has to be the institutes or the commercial organizations which will take this to the mass manufacturing and make this available to the masses. And this is what is the ecosystem which we are trying to work together. So CSIR is our partner in technology. We are working very closely with the hospitals, trauma particularly, and of course the cancer, because this is these are the area where we can see the deployment of these technologies can be done, and that's where we have success related to. Last 3 years we've been associated with CSIR. We did close to 18 complicated surgeries. There are products which has been well accepted by the market. There are few products which we are developing, and that is in conjunction to the CSIR. And I'm sure we will be able to do it together collectively. India still a big market. Looking at it from affordability point of view, Ayushman Bharat is playing a big role, and I'm sure we also can contribute there. Objective is not really to make money out of it, but then how do we go and service the masses? So that's the objective, and I think that's the slogan which we are passing on to everyone, that together we definitely can excel and make affordable implants to the pan India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ravi, for excellent outline on medical devices and how industries, your industries were actually working on it. There is, can you please stop sharing? Yeah, thank you. So there is one question that has been placed, that is there in the chat box. I will read it out, and I would like Dr. Shantanu at a later point of time, Mr. Ravi, to address this. Your country being excessively a producer of drugs for the industry global pharmaceuticals with exports that generate enormous profits within and with the population, there is no greater participation in the health of their own people. Why? Shantanu? Dr. Chandak has already written his answer, but Dr. Shantanu?
That's a very, very, very interesting point. I thank Eduardo Garcia for bringing this up in this forum. It's a very, very important and interesting question that we have to grapple with. As Dr. Nandikuri said, and I think Dr. Chandak has written here, it is so obvious today that that the contribution of what our health industry or our industry, pharmaceutical industry, how it is impacting health across the globe, and how it is making it more and more affordable for people is a household word across the world now, including what happened with the vaccines. And this actually brings us to this very interesting dichotomy. What is that that Eduardo puts across? Why is this not contributing? If I've understood the question correctly, why is it not contributing to the health of of people in India itself? In some ways, why is the pharmaceutical industry not contributing to research? Or it is one of the lowest contributions across the world. If you see contributions of the industry in research and science in India is probably among one of the lowest, if I'm not wrong. So it's a very important and interesting question that at different fronts we are trying to address. I don't have a great answer for this, but I have some points which could be important about having these conversations more and more. I think what we have not done is not ask these questions as Eduardo Garcia is putting it out here so eloquently. We have not asked these questions enough. We have not gone to all the stakeholders and said that, if this is true, then why is this not true? That conversation has been lagging in the so many years of my being in India. We have always worried about why this has not happened, but I think we need to have these conversations going. I'm sure the Dr. Gupta, Dr. Prem Mr. Prem will also have a point to address. But we are going across, and as you know, a very recent development in the history of Indian research is development of a fund called the National Research Fund, NRF. Very much like the Science Foundation funding in the United States, government has put together a 50,000 crore. I don't know how that will convert to dollars, but it's a multi-million dollar program for a huge project in the context of huge funding in the context of Indian science, where it has been clearly sort of chartered in that the contribution from Indian industry will be a major contributor. More than 2/3, if I've understood correctly, more than 2/3 of the contribution is going to come from the Indian industry, which is mandated now from the government for putting this. And hopefully that there we will see major strides. This is one action item that the government has probably started. And we're very hopeful that this program takes shoot and addresses the question that has been asked so eloquently here. Very happy about this question. And these are the pointers that we think in future is going to change how Indian science is done and the contribution of Indian industry in Indian research. Thank you.
Just a pointer before I give it over to Mr. Prem. 50,000 crores converts to something like $6 billion. Carry on, Mr. Prem.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, since I'm on the receiving side of it, I can try to touch upon it. Research, when we say, it actually is a fundamental research. And I must admit this, there are the institutes which are happening. Probably what's not happening here is the collaborative approach of the scientists, those who are doing the research, right? Because finally, at the end of the day, the industry wanted to have it applied research. You know, we may say that this is available, but that is not deployable. So, you know, any developments which are happening need to be end user base. So this is one gap which we could see very clearly. The number two, India, yes, we are a leader in bulk drugs, generic pharma, but when it comes to a very specific therapies related to so-called cancer or any such diseases, we still rely on a Western world. It's not that we don't have that. So it is more to do with that commercializations of the therapies or the devices which are coming up. Dr. Soni was trying to say so many of the developments which has happened on medical devices. But look at this, how many industrial commercial partners have come forward to bring it to the society. So unless until, you know, it is not, I don't think today India is at a stage where we don't have a issue related to funds or a scarcity. You know, the industries are coming forward and asking for the applied research to the institutes, to the scientists. It is more to do with how are we able to do successful interface between the research institutes and the organizations, those who are making it commercialized.
Thank you, sir. We have one more from Professor A.K. Gupta. The question is, the funding to research from private partner industry is dismal in India. The private industries have to spend more to match or surpass government funding. So any views?
I beg to differ here because when it comes to the research and if it is related to specific institutes or industry specific, we definitely don't look at that as the expense. It is an investment for us, and we really don't really keep peg on it. Obviously, it's unlike the fundamental research. We set the objective, this is what we want to achieve, this is what we need to have, and what is the commercializations of this will happen. So there is always going to be a return on investments, and that's where the prioritizations of the research happen. So I don't think there is issue related to funding research. It is more of an outcome of the research and setting that objective of that research very clearly.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi, for eloquently putting forward the point. And I think I would like to, I don't see any further questions. And it's been, our time is up. And for the last 1 hour, we have had an excellent discussion or excellent presentations by 4 speakers outlining on various areas like sickle cell anemia, and later on followed by triple negative breast cancer and discovery of the new novel biomarkers, medical devices and CSIR efforts, and finally the industry perspective on the medical devices. So, and over and above, we had a very interesting discussion on the question that was posed, and I would say rather a deep and stimulating discussion. And thank all the speakers for their wonderful presentations and participating in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Over to you, Rama.
Very, very interactive and informative session. Excellent presentation. Time for us to move to the second topical session of today, which will focus on rural development and traditional knowledge from hamlets to industries. It will be chaired by Professor Ranjana Agarwal and co-chaired by Dr. Sudesh Kumar Yadav. Professor Ranjana is the founder director of the CSIR National Institute of Science, Communication and Policy Research. She obtained her PhD. She obtained her PhD at Kurukshetra University. She is actively engaged in evidence-based science, technology, innovation, policy studies, communicating science to diverse stakeholders, and creating livelihood for rural sector through interventions of CSIR technologies for sustainable development. She has over 100 publications to her credit in journals of high repute. Professor Sudesh Kumar Yadav, our Director of CSIR Institute of Himalayan Bioresource Technology, has contributed significantly in the area of biotechnology, metabolic engineering, bioprocessing, and nanobiology for crop improvement and production of value-added molecules. He has extensively worked on understanding the regulation of key metabolic pathways of crops like tea, stevia, rice, horsegram, as well as developed several technologies for value-added products from agricultural waste biomass. He has over 200 research papers, 17 patents, and 3 books to his credit. Stanford University has listed Dr. Yadav among the top 2% scientists of the world. He is a recipient of several prestigious awards and is a fellow of National Academy of Sciences, India, and the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. With this, I hand over the platform to Dr. Ranjana to take forward with the proceedings. Thank you, Dr. Ranjana.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rama. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. A very warm welcome to all the distinguished speakers and the participants of the penultimate session of CSIR India and Innovation Hub for Global Sustainable Development. The topic of today's session is rural development and traditional knowledge from hamlets to industries. As Dr. Rama mentioned in the opening remarks, that CSIR, through its 37 laboratories, is working across a wide spectrum of science and technology. CSIR has developed many technologies which have not only strengthened the big industries, but have created new opportunities for micro, small, and medium enterprises. CSIR is committed for creating rural livelihood opportunities through S&T interventions, thus improving the lives of a common man. CSIR has developed a most extensive and well-defined institutional system globally for protecting and nurturing countries' rich traditional knowledge in the form of traditional knowledge digital library. A range of products in different sectors have been created, translating leads from traditional knowledge, interfacing with modern science and technology system. Also, CSIR emphasizes that for successful translation and adoption of a technology, there is a need for strategic and well-defined pathway with carefully calibrated feedback mechanism to measure the socio-economic impact. In this session, through 4 expert talks, we will highlight how CSIR technologies are creating societal upliftment and how the technology pathway is constructed to achieve successful socio-economic impact. The 4 speakers who will be presenting their talks, I would like to introduce them together. The first talk will be delivered by Professor Dr. Prabodh Kumar Trivedi. He is director of one of the CSIR very prestigious lab, Central Institute of Medicinal and Aromatic Plants, CMAP at Lucknow. Dr. Trivedi is also the Theme Director of Agri-nutri Biotech and Mission Director of Aroma Mission, which is creating livelihood in the rural areas of India. Dr. Trivedi has more than 30 years of research experience in the area of plant genomics and biotechnology, and he is fellow of all the science academies of India. I welcome Professor Trivedi. The second talk will be delivered by Dr. Radha Rangarajan, who has been involved in translation research and product development for the last 2 decades. Presently, she is director of Central Drug Research Institute at Lucknow. Prior to joining CDRI, she is a co-founder of Vitas Pharma, a drug discovery and development company focused on novel therapeutics for resistant infections. So Dr. Rangarajan is a highly accomplished medicinal scientist with us today. The third talk will be by Dr. Sujit Bhattacharya. He is Chief Scientist at CSIR, National Institute of Science, Communication and Policy Research. His area of research interest is science, technology, innovation studies, scientometrics, and intellectual property rights. He is also editor-in-chief of one of the prestigious Journal of Scientometric Research. Then we have representation from the Government of India, Ministry of Rural Development, Dr. P.K. Das. He is member National Task Force on Rural Housing and Habitat. Dr. Das is a design and construction specialist with specific technical experience in project appraisal, planning, and maintenance management of community-based construction. So we can see a very accomplished speakers are there in this panel, and they will be talking on diverse S&T interventions of CSIR, whether this is rural livelihood or creating technologies and products through traditional knowledge, housing, and also the methodology to assess the technology. So there will be, a wide variation, and I'm sure that you will enjoy the talks. So firstly, I invite Dr. Prabodh Trivedi to deliver his talk. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjana and Dr. Sudesh, for the introduction. So here I will be talking about livelihood creation and upliftment through technology-based interventions, what CSIR has been doing in this particular area. And CSIR, with all 37 laboratories, have developed several technologies which are plant-based and have helped farmers as well as rural and have impact on rural development. So in the theme of CSIR in this area is value addition and sustainable utilization of bioresources for empowering farming community, improve nutrition and entrepreneurship development. And under this theme, out of 37, about 24 laboratories are working with the aim to, in the area of plant genome engineering, improved agrotechnologies, synthetic and systems biology, value-added products for nutritional security and industrial enzymes and fermentation technologies. And if you see major programs which are helping these rural populations are aroma mission, floriculture mission, cotton mission, precision agriculture, and millet mission. So these two programs, precision agriculture and millet mission, have just been started. However, in aroma mission, floriculture mission, and cotton mission, CSIR has been working for the last 4 to 5 years. So CSIR, CCMB, one of the institutes under CSIR, has developed improved Sambha Masuri. This is a rice variety which is highly resistant to bacterial blight disease and diabetic friendly, which is low GI rice. And this variety has been grown, if you see, about 11 lakh hectares across the country, and net gain is farmers is in crores. Basically, if you see in rupees, this is 2,000 crores is net gain to the farmers, and annual cultivation is 2 to 3 lakhs hectare in several states of India. And this is clinically certified low GI rice. Not only that, now this variety is also being improved to develop improved Sambha Masuri. So Sambha Masuri, whatever was developed, is now being developed as improved Sambha Masuri, where a number of genes related to biotic and abiotic stresses are being put into this variety. So this will become a variety which is bacterial blight resistant along with the tolerance to submergence and drought stress, and will provide higher yield. For last 5 years, there is a program on CSIR Aroma Mission, in which about 9 institutes of CSIR are working. And under this program, the aim is to catalyze rural empowerment and entrepreneurship development through cultivation, processing, value addition, and marketing of aromatic plants. Under this mission, across country, CSIR has covered more than 36,000 hectares of land. And not only that, we have provided efficient distillation units to the farmers. Close to 400 units have been given to the farmers, and about 50 new varieties have been developed under this program, which have been given to the farmers, and farmers are cultivating. Human resource training, if you see, about 1 lakh this human resource has been trained to work in this particular area, which is aroma mission, in aroma crop cultivation, distillation, or the value addition. Rural employment generation in man days, if you see, about 73 employment has been generated. And in this program, the farmers have developed about 5,000 tons of essential oil worth rupees 500 crores. So this program has been very successful. And if you see here, main success stories are Purple Revolution in Jammu Kashmir, Golden Revolution in Himachal Pradesh, which is related to cultivation of one important aromatic crops, enhance rural economy for drought-prone areas in Bundelkhand region, aroma cluster in tribal areas with enhanced income. So under this program, we have taken few areas where it was difficult to reach basically, and those were tribal areas, and across the country we have developed such 20 areas, tribal areas. We have improved their livelihood, and through cultivation of aromatic and medicinal plants, we have also provided distillation units there through industry, as well as link them with industry. So whatever essential oil they are getting through these crops, that is directly going to the industries. And we have developed entrepreneurs, more than 100 entrepreneurs under this program. This has been successful because we have developed clusters of farmers. So about 3,000 farmer clusters across India have been developed. And in these clusters, we have provided distillation unit, planting material, and we have hand-holded these farming community with the industry. And because of this program, India has become one of the largest exporters of lemongrass oil. And in last year only, we have exported more than 600 tons of essential oil to different countries. And the another program is CSIR Floriculture Mission. And here objectives are enhancing farmers' income and entrepreneurship development through high-value floriculture utilizing CSIR technologies. We are working in 22 states and UTs, and major highlights are that we have worked in 22 states on various floral varieties. A number of new varieties have been developed, and we wish to create import substitution in the area of floriculture in the country, so that farming community income is enhanced. The next program is Cotton Mission, where the aim is to develop new cotton varieties, improved cotton varieties, which are resistant to major insect pests like whitefly or pink bollworm. So here a number of genes have been identified, different plants which have been put in the cotton plants, and the improved varieties are resistant to whiteflies as well as pink bollworm. And here, these are being now accelerated trials are being done at different places, so that as soon as these varieties come to the farming community, at least the damage because of these insects are not there. Apart from that, CSIR is working on agriculture mechanization for sustainable agriculture. A number of new tools are being developed, like first indigenous electric tractor has been developed, solar distillation units are being developed, as well as a number of products are in the pipeline, which will have farming community for sustainable agriculture. Apart from that, in the area of nutrition, a number of products, millet-based or other, which are nutritionally rich products, are being developed. We are also helping lots of entrepreneurs, like whatever technologies are being developed by different institutes. We are hand-holding startups, giving them technology, as well as asking them to develop these products and go to the market. And a number of models have been developed, like for 1 year, we give space as well as technologies so that they can develop their own products here, go to the market, and if they are successful, then they can develop their own industries. In addition to that, waste to wealth has been a major initiative of CSIR, like whatever offered flowers are in the different like temples, we are training women entrepreneurs, developing women entrepreneurs, and as of now, about more than 5,000 women have benefited out of these projects. They are making a number of products which can be sold in those places where these were thrown away before that. In addition to that, CSIR is working in a major project on genome editing, where through this particular approach, tomato, rice, cotton, tobacco, tea, withania, cannabis, on these varieties, this technology is being used so that genome-edited plants can be developed, which are improved with respect to nutrition quality, disease resistance, or agronomy and improved traits. So these will come into the picture maybe after 3 to 4 years, but these are going to help the farming community as well as to enhance their income. So this is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Trivedi, for the comprehensive presentation of CSIR S&T interventions for the rural upliftment. Thank you so very much. Now I would like to invite Dr. Radha Rangarajan, Director CDRI, and she will be talking on traditional knowledge-inspired contemporary research. Dr. Radha Rangarajan.
Thank you, Dr. Rajana. Thank you, Dr. Sudesh, for this opportunity to present. I request Dr. Bose to please stop sharing so that I may share my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the title of my talk today is Traditional Knowledge-Inspired Contemporary Research for Affordable Healthcare. And I think it fits into this section partly because, the objective of this session is to really look at livelihoods, but if you look at it from a different perspective, it's also about sustainable and affordable living. So the interesting thing is that when you look at traditional medicine, also sometimes referred to as complementary medicine, it's a very diverse body of health practices, approaches, knowledge, beliefs, and it incorporates material from plants, animals, minerals, and even includes spiritual therapies. These are used sometimes singularly or in combination, and they are used to treat, diagnose, or prevent illness. And there are many different types of traditional medicine or complementary medicine that are known, including several different forms within India, such as Ayurveda, Yoga, Siddha, Unani, Homeopathy, Naturopathy. And what is central to all of these different types of traditional medicine approaches is that it takes into account lifestyle, diet, environmental conditions, and even mental state. The emphasis is on good health and longevity, restoration and healing. And there is also the notion of food being medicine, and all of these together then are deployed in order to facilitate healing and good health. And these systems of medicine also acknowledge the role of the mind-body connection. However, what we see in the world today is that there is a very large emphasis on modern medicine, modern methods of practicing medicine, but perhaps what is in the best interests of our citizenry is really an integration between what we call modern and what we call traditional knowledge systems. And in order to make such integration happen, we need to utilize contemporary research tools to validate traditional knowledge. We need to develop regulated drug products based on traditional knowledge. And we need to use knowledge from traditional medicines to really drive our understanding of disease biology. And to do all of this, we need teams of experts with clinical and research expertise across traditional and modern knowledge systems. And this is really what is happening within the CSIR system, and I'll come back to that in a second. But I also want to say that this sort of integration is aided by effective regulation. And in India, we have two types of regulation now. The first type, which is on the left side, is really is regulation that allows medicines which are described in the original texts to be developed as such, without changes, and requires manufacturing to be in accordance with certain basic principles. The other set of regulation, which is frequently referred to as the phyto-pharmaceutical drug regulation, this basically regulates products which are derived from phytopharmaceuticals, with the guidance that the extract should be from a single plant, and it should have been tested thoroughly, it should have been proven to be safe and efficacious, and then taken through clinical development in order to register it as a product, as a drug product. This is only for oral administration, and it cannot be given through the parenteral route. So these two sets of regulation are currently guiding much of CSIR's efforts towards integrating traditional medicine along with modern methods. So if I look at, this is a map of India showing you where the 37 CSIR labs are, and the ones where there is extensive research happening on traditional knowledge systems are highlighted in yellow. There are about 7 to 8 such institutes which are actively involved. And their involvement, their capabilities go from, starting from cultivation of the plant to extraction, fractionation, obtaining chemical fingerprints, developing formulations, testing them through a variety of different assay systems, in vitro, in vivo, finally going, scaling up production and being able to secure approvals from the regulatory authority. So the capabilities within the CSIR system really stretch the gamut from preclinical all the way up to clinical development. So now I'm going to just switch gears a little bit and talk about the different paradigms of validating traditional knowledge. So there are 3 basic paradigms. The first is that traditional knowledge can be validated as a drug, a scientifically validated drug, in which the indication is really based on traditional knowledge, the polyherbal composition is retained, The research techniques are used to characterize the product well and to establish quality standards, and safety and efficacy validation in the clinic is undertaken in a limited sort of way. But it very much adheres to the original preparation or the formulation that's described in traditional knowledge. The second paradigm is that traditional medicine inspires drug discovery, which is the phyto-pharmaceutical route, which I described, where a single plant enriched extract, which is enriched based on bioactivity, is characterized, quality standards are put in place, extensive preclinical and clinical validation happen. That's the second category. And the third category, more exciting also, is that traditional medicine is then, traditional knowledge is harnessed in order to identify new uses of phytopharmaceutical extracts, which could then lead to new cures for diseases that are currently unmet needs. So I'm going to give some examples. This is an example of a traditional medicine itself that was validated as a drug. This is called gugolipid, and it is for lipid lowering. It is described in the literature as a fragrant resin, and it is to be used for gout, arthritis, rheumatism, and lipid disorders. The chemical assay and bioassay methods were developed for quality control and standardization and shown to significantly reduce serum and tissue lipids in rats, rabbits, and monkeys. Eventually, multi-centric trials were conducted, and the product was approved and licensed to Sickle in 1987. A second example is traditional medicine inspired drug discovery. This is from a very well-known and widely used herb, Bacopa monnieri, also known as Brahmi, and it's been described in the Ayurvedic medicinal system as something that improves memory and intellect. So a high quality extract of this of Brahmi was standardized, and the mechanism of action was studied. Then the enriched fraction, the standardized enriched fraction was taken through clinical trials, and then this one was approved for marketing. And currently it is sold not just in India, but in the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, US, and other countries. And it has generated, or it has created livelihoods for many, many thousands of farmers who grow this plant. The third example is where traditional medicine has inspired the new drug discovery. Artether is a semi-synthetic derivative of artemisinin, which is the active constituent of a Chinese herb called Artemisia annua. And many of you probably know of this particular herb because it is derivatives from this plant which are currently used as oral drugs for Plasmodium falciparum infections. These are malaria infections. So this particular semi-synthetic derivative consisting of alpha-beta artether, so a mix of enantiomers in a 30-70 ratios developed together by CDRI and CMAP together. And what is really useful about it is that it's a fast-acting injectable drug for the treatment of severe malaria. So this was taken through the drug development route, taken through phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials in uncomplicated and complicated falciparum malaria, and it was licensed to Paris in 1997, and currently it's marketed under more than 500 brand names in India. So highly successful product, and taken to market through a non-exclusive license, which allowed the product to be really widely adopted by the market and kept it affordable. So once again, this has been a source of livelihoods for farmers because of the large need generated. So there are many other examples. These are particularly from the Indian Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jammu, where a number of phytopharmaceutical-based products have been developed for diseases ranging from liver diseases to diabetes. And they've been successfully launched in the market. But understanding and recognizing that the development of phytopharmaceutical-based products comes with certain inherent challenges. And what is the challenge? The challenge is often cultivation of the plant at scale that is necessary in order to continue in order to maintain the supply chain for the drug. And together with this, CSIR believe that a phytopharmaceutical-based drug discovery program would satisfy many needs in one shot, including unmet clinical needs as well as harnessing traditional knowledge. So, within the CSIR system, there have been 2 phytopharmaceutical missions that have been launched, and these missions have had comprehensive objectives, starting from captive cultivation to extraction, purification, characterization, taking drugs to market, and doing this under the DCGI, that is the Drug Controller General of India guidelines, as well as the Irish guidelines, establishing quality standards for GMP production and enabling these products to be available both in domestic and export markets. So I'll give 1 or 2 examples of this. Pickeriza curua is a well-known herb that has been used, that has been described in the Ayurvedic literature for the treatment of hepatitis. And now, based on research that has happened at CDRI and IHBT, we have positioned this for the treatment of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which currently the estimates are that there is a 32% prevalence. NAFLD converts to NASH, also known as MASH now, and which can ultimately lead to cirrhosis of the liver. So being able to treat NAFLD would be a huge step forward for a very large number of people. And so in line with the phytopharmaceutical guideline, CDRI received a permission to start a phase 3. And in this study, we will be looking at the efficacy and safety of a standardized fraction of Pickeriza curua during a 24-week clinical trial in patients who have NAFLD. So this clinical trial will start very, very soon, and it comes from Phytopharmaceutical Mission 1. In addition to this, in Mission 2, we are going 1 step further and looking at novel indications of known phytopharmaceutical plants. This is for rheumatoid arthritis, extracts from Roselia serrata for osteoporosis, cannabinoid THC-enriched fractions for cancer pain management, and prosin-rich extracts from Crocus sativus for Alzheimer's. So these are all now at stages where efficacy in vivo, efficacy in animal models is being established. And no doubt that the research is going to not only enable new therapies to develop, but also encourage new modalities of treatment. So in the end, I want to conclude by saying that traditional knowledge, research, and validation for improving health outcomes is a major thrust within the CSIR system. Traditional knowledge-inspired contemporary research methods have enabled the development of new drugs, not just extended, not just helped to validate existing knowledge, but created new knowledge. And ultimately, sustained R&D exploring traditional knowledge can spur a deeper understanding of disease biology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Radha. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. And the success stories which you have shared of CSIR and the initiative on all the 3 verticals, whether this is scientifically validated traditional knowledge or traditional medicine-inspired drug discovery or TM-enabled new drug discovery, and the examples you have cited, I think very clearly indicates that how seriously CSIR is taking traditional knowledge in the development of, affordable healthcare through contemporary approach. Thank you so very much for the wonderful presentation. So now I would like to invite Dr. Sujit Bhattacharya from CSIR NISPR to present his talk on technology development assessment societal impact. Dr. Sujit.
Thank you.
Can you do it in the slide mode, please?
Yeah, I'm doing. Is it all right now?
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. Please go ahead.
It is an honor and privilege for me to speak in this August assembly. In this presentation, I will highlight some salient aspects of how CSIR has institutionalized a robust technology development framework that helps to create strong societal impact and industrial impact. This framework is guided by the following principles. Technology development is robust, working in practical situations, safe and effective, can be easily adapted, create a strong socio-economic impact, sustainable, no adverse environmental impact, focusing on circularity, scalable, replicable, cost-effective, can lead to follow-up innovation, create appropriate opportunities for different stakeholders, strong focus on strengthening rural economy, society, women empowerment. Technology development in CSIR is demand-driven, addressing the problems faced by the industries, creating innovative solution pathways for developmental challenges. CSIR also contributes in bringing innovative solutions, technologies new to the world. CSIR successful technology transfers covers the whole technology development cycle and involvement of the stakeholders at the early stage of technology development onwards. The linkages with the commercialization, licensing with a strong stakeholder participation and strong connect with the beneficiaries, which are as per the beneficiaries can be industry, society, the rural economy. And the approach which CSIR follows in this is very robust approach of a technology development assessment, which looks at the maturity level of the technologies, which are transferred through the technology readiness level framework, impact assessment, environmental impact assessment based on life cycle analysis, toxicity analysis in clinical medicines, drug development, and pharmaceutical research, foresight assessment, where different pathways are undertaken to see that which would be the most effective pathway for technology development, which will be cost effective, sustainable, and have a larger impact. The constraint and feedback analysis, which is part of this whole techno-socio-economic impact assessment, also looks at the constraint which the technology developer may face and what type of interventions are required and what are the different types of feedback that can be helped improve this technology more stronger, more robust. And this is followed up by the actual implementation of the technology when the socio-economic impact assessment is done to see that what are the interventions that can require and how the technology once implemented is performing. So through this CSIR has created an institutionalized mechanism for technology development assessment, catalyzing growth of domestic industry across various sectors, strengthening MSME, creating new opportunities in rural economy, bringing industrial competitiveness and societal impact. CSIR has strong presence in all the 17 SDG goals, outcomes, and impact. The CSIR TRL framework, which is derived from this 1970s NASA framework, but has been suitably modified through a very robust Delphi-based approach where the different experts, interrelated sectoral thematic experts, help to with the technology developers and the technology planners, help to develop a framework to assess the technology meeting sectoral needs, and then the maturity levels are identified for each technologies. The interesting part is that a repository of technologies are created which are classified under different target groups, industry, MSME, rural economy, etc. The CSIR Compendium of Technologies 2021 had identified, for example, 313 technologies at TRL 6 and above. 82 technologies were selected which were appropriate for the rural economy. You will be glad to know that this compendium is now in the UNESCAPE Asia Pacific Center for Technology Transfer Technology database, which has allowed CSIR to link up with different countries and farms across the Asia Pacific region and beyond, creating a strong rural technology transfer adoption framework, or is a participatory network model of CSIR involving different stakeholders. And what CSIR has tries to do is that what it does is that once the technologies are selected for rural economy, with a partnership with the different institutions and their own field studies, the technologies are mapped against different parameters. 24 parameters were chosen to see that what is the investment required for the transfer of the technology, what is the training duration required, what will the period between the starting an investment in the technology and the time when production using it can start, region suitability, target beneficiary, and the different types of technology reaching beneficiary groups. The rural technologies are identified, and awareness, technology demonstration, training, common institutional facility, seed funding, supply chain, business models, and markets are identified and created through various partnerships, which you can see in the left-hand side of this, where the network in northeastern region of India, how different organizations have been involved. Rural Technology Action Group, RUTAC, Office of the Principal Scientific Advisors of the Government of India, which is involved in the Unnat Bharat Mission, linking higher education institutions with rural India, the different self-help group, NGOs, MSMEs, and all these different type of partnerships helps to translate the CSIR technologies. For example, vitamin D2 fortified edible mushroom, jaggery making plant, vermi compost, and the aroma mission technology and the floriculture mission, and all those where this type of beneficiary, different type of stakeholder partnership is created. The right-hand side shows and the way the central state organization Nectar has linked up with CSIR, linking up with that to transfer its solar dryer technology and installed it in Cotton College, Guwahati, one of the prestigious colleges there, and connects it to the different farmers, to these producers, where the fruits, vegetable can be preserved for a longer time, shelf life, and that helps to open up the market and new opportunities for them. It is a very good exemplar of a triple helix linkage between university, industry, research institutions, and government working hand in hand together. The techno-socio-economic impact assessment of CSIR technologies, there are some of the exemplars of how waterless chrome technology has been transferred to 16 tanneries, paraffin wax production technology, benzene recovery technologies have been transferred and to the industries. But the interesting part is that, an important part is that, say in the waterless chrome tanning technologies, through the techno assessment, it was identified that at some points of time, the water was also getting contaminated slightly. And so again, the feedback mechanism helped to rectify this and make the technology more stronger and more useful. Similarly, in this paraffin wax production, not only it helped identify the high quality of these wax that are produced and which improved the confidence of manufacturers to enter global market, but also in a that it initiated the candle manufacturing units by training the rural people to of the Northeast region to open up these type of entrepreneur units, training and all. And you will be glad to know that around 50 or so units have been opened, and many of these units, successful entrepreneurs are women entrepreneurs. During this COVID-19, one of the major initiatives which was taken by CSIR by development of an application was to connect the farmers to the market. This successful model has now been implemented at a much larger scale, covering the pan-India network, and provides different types of facilities from the refrigerated trucks to facility of aqua farming and organic farming produced to reach the markets. So a sort of a very robust supply chain has been created through this, and connecting the different the lowest level of these hamlets to the big markets through this. As earlier, this Dr. Trivedi had highlighted on the CSIR Aroma mission, the socio-economic impact assessment pointed out also the importance of this mission and how that what more can be done to reach out to the farmers, to make them aware about it, and also assess the actual impact of this that is happening. So as you can see that it has led to a crop that livelihood opportunities for tribal population, women empowerment, benefit to the industry and benefit to the entrepreneurs. So a new type of rural entrepreneurship are being created through these types of interventions, CSIR's interventions, by developing highly valuable aromatic crops and through this feedback, awareness and dissemination mechanism. We are calling the beneficiaries as agents of change. They are talking of how aroma farming has increased their farmers' income. On the other hand, we have the beneficiary which says that how this supply chain or the farmer's card, the Kisan card, has led to the benefits and given them the more independence and connecting them to the market. Finally, as you see that CSIR.
Dr. Sujit, can you shorten it because we are running
the
behind.
Final slide is the final slide where it talks of how CSIR technology intervention for societal impact has created direct benefits and indirect effects. Benefits also coming from mandate generation to strong social network to create new livelihood opportunities and environmental conservation, reduced burden on urban sector, reverse migration. And with this, I close my presentation. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so very much for showing like CSIR not only producing technologies, but also very seriously working on the framework to assess the maturity of the technologies, how it should be disseminated, adopted by the society, and what are the socio-economic impact created by those technologies. So thank you so very much. So we are running behind the schedule, therefore I will expedite it. I would like to invite Dr. P.K. Das. He will talk on climate change and rural housing. So he is representing Ministry of Rural Housing and Habitat, Government of India. Please, Dr. Das.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
And can you see the presentation?
Presentation is also visible in the slide mode.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. Even after changing the third camera, the video didn't work. I mean, it reminds me of Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. So anyway.
No, but the slides are perfect. Slides are perfect.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting. Very good evening from India. Welcome to this session on climate change and rural housing in India. First of all, I'll give you an overview of rural housing in India and its impact on climate change in terms of emission of carbon dioxide and embodiment of energy. Then I'll tell you a story about Assam, a northeastern state of India, where CSIR is setting up an institutional system to disseminate green technologies at the grassroots level as a mitigation action. The context: way back in 2011, we had 306 million houses in India. A significant percentage of the rural houses did not have walling systems according to the Indian standard. So to address this issue, the government of India has launched a massive program of 30 million houses for the people below poverty line. It's a huge investment and an excellent opportunity for creating high quality housing. But at the same time, it is a threat to the environment in terms of depletion of non-renewable resources and emission of harmful gas. The government of India was very clear right from the beginning that this housing project has to be a balancing act, the balance between opportunity and threat. Let us see what is the demand. You see the red shaded blocks. In India, whatever you talk about, it will be always in millions and billions. States like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and West Bengal, there the demand for rural housing was more than 4 million. If you look to the bottom right of the slide, in red, 10.03 tons of carbon dioxide is the emission per house if you are using brick, cement, and steel-based technologies. This is the total volume of materials that is required for the 33 states of India and Union territories. And most of these materials are non-renewable resources, energy, and CO2 intensive. Therefore, there's a strong need for understanding the environment on the impact on the environment. This is a CO2 emission. In a state like West Bengal, because of this project, the emission of carbon dioxide will be to the tune of 43 million tons. And the major contributor for that is a cement and brick. Therefore, we need alternatives to that, at least partially. But this is the pattern of the embodiment of energy, very similar to that of carbon dioxide. Considering all these factors, the Minister of Rural Development launched a search for climate resilient and green housing. With that as a background, trained engineers, architects, and sociologists were sent to the 18 states of India, to the doorsteps of the common people. And what they did was they conducted participatory design exercise where people were the designer, and the engineers and architects, they converted their ideas into engineering drawings and specifications. The team also identified a significant number of local material-based technologies. A summary of that study is like this. 18 states divided into 64 housing zones with more than 130 zone-specific designs prepared by the people. Out of the identified green technologies, or the technologies based on local materials and process, the government of India had appointed CSIR to examine this technology. And CSIR did a massive task. And after evaluating all those, more than 600 drawings, they have structurally validated 40 different technologies of walling, foundation, and roofing. So we have a bank of 40 different technologies at different shades of greenness. However, having done all these things 2 years down the line, the government realized that the acceptance of green housing was rather very, very slow. To improve the situation, the government has changed the framework for implementation by encouraging green housing. However, the government did not stop there. They had appointed CSIR to disseminate the green technologies at the grassroots level. And I'm going to tell you about one such endeavor in Assam. In Assam, we are building 3 demonstration buildings and providing techno-managerial support at the 40 real-time beneficiaries. It is the state of Assam, where the blue dot is the state capital and the red dots on the right-hand side of the districts where CSIR is currently implementing the dissemination program. We have to understand that the whole of Assam is in the highest seismic zone, and many of the districts are in high wind area. Therefore, there's a strong need for multi-hazard safe resilient construction. What CSIR did, they heavily based this intervention on the experience of using bamboo and compressed stabilized earth block in the northeastern part of India. Let me show you some examples of that. This is in a state, Tripura, between 2014 and 2022. These kind of technologies are being used. Bottom left red box shows the advantages of this. And if you look at the right-hand side, bottom of the slide, there was a saving of 33% of carbon dioxide compared to that of the standard construction technologies. Now, based on all these experiences, CSIR actually designed the lab-to-land mission for disseminating the technology at the grassroots level. And these are the different components. If you look at point number 1, what CSIR did was they took the top-level management people of the states to their own lab and imparted an in-depth training on greenhousing. The idea was that if the top-level management is having a clear idea about what is greenhousing, then the implementation will be seamless. The other components were on-job training of the masons and the engineers, providing techno-managerial support at the doorsteps of the people, and development of entrepreneurship for green building materials. At micro level, these are the 5 steps which was adopted by CSI towards greenness, starting from participatory design down to the point number 5, use of bamboo. These are the visuals where you see the participatory process and the design evolved by them. And there you can see the staff footing, which was identified by the resource mapping team. One of the strongest components of CSIR was to set up entrepreneurship at the local level producing green building material. Panitola is a place which is the load center of the 43 buildings that CSIR is currently doing. And first what they did was they took the local people, trained them, did handholding for a period. And now these people are running this show on an entrepreneurship basis. And you can see some of the products here. These are the glimpses of different options of foundations and walls. Bamboo was everywhere. If you go to that particular area, you'll find Balkua, you can see Tulda. There are many, many varieties, but there was no treated bamboo nearby. So we had to procure the bamboos from a distance a little more than 100 kilometers from Jorhat. The idea was that when we can create adequate demand for bamboo, bamboo treatment plant will be set up at Panitola. The lower slide shows that the treated bamboos are brought to Panitola and the bamboo trusses, purlins, and posts were all fabricated here. Here you see that a complete truss and the purlins are loaded on a mini truck. This is the most economic method of transportation in that area. And they were transported to the site, and this is how the buildings were built. This is just one example. There are at least 13 different varieties of this kind of technologies. Question, was there a saving? Of course, there was saving. Apart from saving cost, we have saved 35% of carbon dioxide. It is 15% more labor intensive because we wanted that the local employment is created. Apart from that, it has created significant number of green jobs. The additional achievements are now the top level management has a bit more confidence on bamboo. And now we have masons and the block development officers and engineers on board. Bamboo has just started getting accepted to the people. Analysis of rates of bamboo is ready. And the local people, they got an incentive of 32 square foot of floor area extra. These are the challenges. Bamboo not in the government schedule of rates. Too much of job pressure of the regular for the regular works by the engineers. And hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Suddenly there was a power shutdown. Anyway, then there was initial lack of participation of the engineers, complex funding system, transfer of personnel. You know, we trained one group of engineers. The very next month they are transferred somewhere else. People's acceptance was an issue, and there was no source of treated bamboo. Now, these are the 8 key role players in the domain of rural housing in Assam. And now we are dealing with these individual groups to convert the challenges into opportunities. CSIR's main intention is to disseminate their technologies like a chain reaction. We began with 86 greenhouses, and now we are heading towards 110 districts of Assam and Uttar Pradesh. Based on the field data, I can say very safely that we are going to save 311 tons of carbon dioxide from 86 buildings. And if the last leg of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, that is a rural housing program, at least a quarter of them adopt this kind of technology, then there is a potential for saving 11 million tons of carbon dioxide. With that, I come to the end of the presentation. There has been some success, though a long way to go. Challenges are there, and be ready for that. Thank you very much for your kind patience.
Thank you, Dr. Das, for presenting the CSIR efforts in rural housing and how they are making a great impact on the climate change. I will request Dr. Sudesh Yadav, my fellow colleague director and co-chair of this session, Dr. Sudesh Yadav, to take this discussion forward. Dr. Yadav, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anjana. I think I could see only one question in the question-answer session, and that I will take first, and then I will summarize the whole session. So one question to Dr. Sujit Bhattacharya. Population migration is a serious problem in Uttarakhand. Can your model of reverse migration be applied in that state, and how? Sujit, over to you to answer these questions.
it is true the point which has been raised, and that is where the CSIR technology interventions, as I have tried to highlight, has created an impact. And in that, what has been done is that a very important parameter-based and regional suitability interactions are being done to identify how the technology that will be reaching there, how it can make a change. And at different points of time, the feedback analysis, the socio-economic impact assessments are being done. And the challenges are large, but at the same time, CSIR has a very dedicated approach and a very strong stakeholder partnership, which I had just shown one of them in the Northeast region of India. These type of stakeholder partnerships are there in Uttarakhand and every region of the vast country, India. And by that, we are trying to make a strong socio-economic impact. Thank you.
So, if there is no other questions, I briefly summarize the whole session, which is completed by 4 speakers. This important session was on rural development and traditional knowledge from hamlets to industries, which is targeted specifically for this particular purpose, considering the SDG 1, SDG 2, SDG 10, and SDG 12 goals of to accomplish this responsible consumptions and productions in these directions. The first speaker was Dr. Prabodh Trivedi, who spoke about livelihood creations and upliftment through technology-based interventions. He has very smartly highlighted some of the major initiatives of India. Some of them are like floriculture mission, aroma mission, cotton mission, nutrition mission, and plant genome editing. He is an expert of plant molecular biology, so involvement of modern tools and technologies to enhance the farmer's income, to improve the crop varieties for different traits. He has highlighted very smartly, and the usefulness of those improved varieties in different sectors would be useful to enhance the economy of our farmer community was very nicely highlighted. And therein, the strength of various CSIR institutions and across CSIR institutions has been put forth that their knowledge can be accommodated within a single frame and bigger goal can be achieved. The second talk was by Dr. Radha Rangarajan, Director CDRI Lucknow. She spoke about traditional knowledge inspired contemporary research for affordable healthcare, and the traditional knowledge is very important to achieve these targets. She has given some examples towards drug research and development, wherein the Ayurvedic and traditional knowledge use is very important. And she has highlighted the 3 important aspects: traditional medicine as a sufficiently validated drug, traditional medicine as a inspired drug discovery, and traditional medicine as a enabled new drug discovery, and given some examples of Google Regin, then Bacopa, and there are many more, artemisinin drug, and at last one of the important drug which is now at the trial stage from Picro-Rhiza, wherein even my institution is also in collaborations. So these examples broadly give and highlight that there is a huge potential in exploitations of the natural biodiversity of this particular country, and they have some unique molecules, and these kind of molecules can be exploited and can be used as a drug molecules to treat various kind of drugs in a natural way. The third talk by Dr. Sujit Bhattacharya, which was on technology development assessment and its societal impact. He has been working in these directions for many decades, and he highlighted that technology mapping and the transfer is one of the important component in scientific progress, and he has highlighted that self-help groups, MSMEs, NGOs, and connect between university outcome, academia outcome, R&D outcome, for the rural benefit, how it can be connected, and how important the connections of farmers to the market. He has given one example of Kisan Sabha, which is one of the examples, and similar kind of several initiatives need to be strengthened in that area. The last talk in the session was by Dr. P.K. Das, who spoke about climate change and rural housing, and therein one of the examples of bamboo, which is less explored and less targeted by the ministries, and there are a lot of opportunities to exploit such kind of diverse plant systems for various benefits. So with this, I think so different dimensions have been highlighted through these four talks, and it is very well connected with the R&D interventions and innovations through the scientific institutions, and how we can uplift of our rural communities through scientific interventions and innovations. With that, I invite collaborations in these areas within country as well as across the countries to make its impact at a larger scale. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Rama.
Thank you very much, Professor Anjana and Dr. Sudesh, for this very relevant session as we intensify our efforts towards meeting the SDGs. Well, with this, we have reached our concluding session, and the panel discussion with theme Innovations for Global Sustainable Development will be showcased now. The panel will feature 10 panelists. It will be moderated by Dr. Abhay Pashilkar, our Director of CSIR, National Aerospace Laboratories. He's a PhD from Indian Institute of Science. His areas of research include flight dynamics modeling and simulation, parameter estimation, flight control, and human factors in aviation. He's a recipient of the NAL Young Scientist Award, the CSIR Young Scientist Award, and the INAE Young Engineer Award. He has over 30 papers in national and international journals. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rama. I hope you're all able to hear me and see me as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the introduction. So without much ado, I would like to introduce this August panel to you. And thereafter, we will start off by asking a question based on these presentations, and then we will leave the floor open to the audience, please. So I call upon Dr. Vinay Nandikuri, Director, CSIR, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, to be with us for this panel. We have, in no particular order, Dr. Anjana Agarwal, whom you just heard, Director, CSIR, National Institute of Science, Communication and Policy Research. Could you please join the panel now, madam? Thereafter, I invite Dr. Ashish Lele, Director, CSIR, National Chemical Laboratories. He was chairing the session 1, which happened on the 22nd. And we are now concluding the second session today. Dr. Anjana Agarwal, of course, was on the 5th session, and Dr. Vinay Nandikuri, you heard him for the 4th session. I next invite Dr. D. Srinivas Reddy, Director, CSIR, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology. Dr. Srinivas could join us, please. There he is. We then have Dr. Atul Narayan Vaidya, Director, CSIR, NEERI, which is the National Environmental Engineering Research Institute. Thank you, Dr. Vaidya. Thereafter, I invite Professor Pradeep Ramancharla, Director, CSIR, CBRI, which is the Central Building Research Institute. Thank you, Dr. Professor Pradeep. I understand Mr. Wandu Legese would not be able to join us today because he's, I think that connectivity is not there. Next, I invite Professor Anil K. Gupta, the TWS President and Representative. Professor Gupta, please. Thank you. Of course, we have had Dr. Ramaswamy Bansal with us throughout both these days. She heads the ISTAD CSIR. Next, I invite Mr. Declan Kiran, Chairman and MD of the Science Summit of the UNGA. Mr. Kiran, please.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we have the final panelist, Mr. M.D. Khan of the National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. I hope Mr. Khan is with us.
Yes, he's with us. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you to all the panelists for taking time off and being with us today. So as I mentioned, we have had 5 sessions, 3 on this 22nd, covering certain topics, and then we have 2 more today, and you have heard all the panelists and speakers today. So let me again start off with Mr. Kiran. The question to you, Mr. Kiran, is how do you see R&D organizations like CSIR contribute to policy making through the UNGA, including the UN Global Digital Compact and for the future UN summits?
Thank you very much, Doctor, for this enlightened question. I have been fascinated by the presentations I have heard this morning. Good morning from New York. It's 9:15 here. It's been a fascinating presentation. I suppose, having listened to the presentations and also having been present in many of the sessions here in New York over effectively the last 3 weeks, I suppose one way to answer your question is with the word data. And I would, and again, these are complex issues. These are important issues. However, I am very intrigued by the advancement of regulation in the area of artificial intelligence by immediately the European Union. The European Union is promoting a regulation, going to pass a regulation on artificial intelligence. Now, again, we don't have a lot of time this morning, but as you can imagine, this is an attempt to regulate AI and everything that means in the European Union. However, the European Union is also promoting a global standards approach in this area. So this regulation will come with extraterritorial application. This will be followed very shortly by an AI regulation in the United States. These regulations will have unforeseen impacts on science, on access to data for science, and indeed on many of the issues you have been addressing here today from the perspective of course, health and global health, but indeed many other areas as well, including space. So my comment would be to recognize the scientific excellence that CSI, under CSI leadership that has been brought to the fore, both in India and globally. My suggestion would be to work more stringently to translate these innovations into policy options and to promote a comprehensive understanding of the impact of data-related regulations. And by that, I mean the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation. Now, I know India has an approach there. I just don't know the detail. But that's from 4 to 5 years ago. But immediately, we are looking at the advance of the AI regulation. So my exhortation would be to the CSIR community in India to, of course, advance articulation of the amazing science that you're doing, but also to have a very strong reference to the question, how will global regulation on AI impact? And when I say global regulation, I'm effectively talking about regulation by a small number of so-called developed nations, which then will impact all so-called less developed nations. And the reason I call so-called, because I'm not terribly comfortable with the demarcation that we use to describe countries as developed or less developed. I think the global challenges we all face, and I stress we all face, put us in a common denominator, looking at a shared future. And I really would encourage the community here to advance a policy interpretation. So what is the position of CSIR on AI regulation and its impact on science globally? How will that impact CSI collaborations globally in a number of areas? How does that further allow CSIR to take a intellectual leadership position on these issues at a global level? And further, how then can CSIR, with this leadership role, advance a greater environment, for a greater enabling environment for science policy and science related regulation, which then enables the cooperation you have been referring to in many of the presentations today. So I think this is hugely important, and I'd like to maybe go further and suggest that this could be a very strong focus for the United Nations Summit of the Future, which will take place this time 12 months, and to use the perspective on science of regulation. And I would stress the importance of having an inclusive approach. And many people, you indeed, and at the United Nations here, we've been hearing a lot about the importance of inclusion. But my response to that is, I feel, and there's been much, we've had many fascinating sessions on the decolonization of science. But I've been asking people that the advent of developed nations' approach to regulation has the potential to recolonize science, and there is literature on the topic of data imperialism. So I would really, again, to repeat, ask the community here who are really advancing amazing innovations to do so with, I suppose, an eye on the enabling policy environment globally and the regulatory environment globally, because these are going to have impacts which we don't understand. These issues didn't matter 10 years ago. The scientists did global science. But now, for reasons which are too comprehensive to go into this morning, we are seeing this advancement on regulation. I've mentioned two areas, but there are many other areas in clinical trials and medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. And these are all being advanced by a small cohort of nations, which then have, in my view, and again, this is maybe not the headline they would like, but they are negatively impacting the potential for collaboration. And I would argue, potentially undermining the amazing leadership that India provides and is providing and will provide. And I was particularly enamored with the treatment of this morning of indigenous knowledge. And I feel there also we have to advance a discussion on the potential impacts of these regulations on indigenous knowledge and the potential benefits of indigenous knowledge and the relationship between indigenous knowledge and more regulated forms of knowledge as well. So that's a long answer to the question, Professor. Sorry to go on, but I did want to really congratulate and of course the leadership of Dr. Rama over the last year in advancing this session, and I really need to congratulate her foresight and patience in bringing this together. And I'm also really was struck. We had 1,744 speakers during the Science Summit, and I was I remarked many times on the large number of your compatriots who were speakers from all quarters. And I really look forward to enhanced cooperation to continuing this process and using the Science Summit. And my final word would be to encourage you to start to think in terms of the post-SDG agenda, because that's effectively where we are. We are at the post-SDG agenda stage. And I would just conclude by saying that there is, in my view, a greater need than ever to put science at the center of addressing our common challenges. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiril. So I think I picked up a couple of things here. Your strong emphasis on the data regulatory aspect and its connection with, particularly for India, with the indigenous knowledge that we have, which we in CSIR value very much. You also mentioned the forthcoming AI and its impact, which we need to be aware and need to prepare for. And you used a very interesting phrase of science decolonization. So perhaps we need to unpack that at some point in time as we go forward. And again, the fact that as far as the global south is concerned, probably India is an important beacon in terms of how we conduct our science and technology. And so we need to keep that going. So thank you very much. I now move on to the chair of the first session, which we had, as I mentioned, on the 22nd. This was on green energy and mobility, and it addresses the SDG 7 goal on affordable and clean energy. So I call upon Dr. Ashish Lele, Director CSIR NCL. So my question to you, sir, is when do you see India becoming net zero, and what do you perceive are the major challenges? Over to you, Dr.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pashilkar. You have made me answer a very difficult question. I wish I was an astrologer that can predict when India can become really and truly net zero. Very difficult question to answer for not just India, but practically any country, right? I think the best way to answer would be that, we have made a commitment. We have made a global commitment on a platform that is become a very, very important platform, which is the COP platform. And as our Honorable Prime Minister has committed, India will have to become net zero by 2070. So that's a commitment made on an international platform. And, we really and truly cannot go behind on that commitment. So it's a matter of how do we get there rather than when we will get it. I think when is a question that our Prime Minister has set a target for. So 2070 is what we are all looking for. And the most difficult one is how do we get there? And there are no easy ways. There is no one way to get there. And there's also the importance of making sure that the march of India's economic progress is never hampered. Right? And so that I think is absolutely critical, because this is a country which is young, which is highly aspirational, which is growing phenomenally in the last decade. Very few countries have grown at this rate and consistently. And of course, that growth at this rate needs energy inputs. And by any numbers that have been published today, our energy demand is only going to double till we reach 100 years of independence. So going from today's something like 30 plus exajoules of primary energy demand to 75 exajoules is roughly a prediction. That is a must. And trying to reach net zero by 2070 is a must. So the question really is, how do we do all of that? And I think the first important task is to make sure that the growth is not hampered, and therefore we really cannot escape from using carbon. Our carbon fuels, without that, it will be impossible to maintain the high growth rate. So using carbon is imperative, but critically, how do we make sure that the amount of carbon that we use is increasingly more and more green? So a very planned and phased transition from fossil carbon to green carbon is the key roadmap for India. And I think as the directives of the country go, we are, for example, increasing our ethanol substitution, the ethanol coming from green. We are trying to push green methanol technologies. We are trying to, instead of burning coal, gasify coal, use the syngas not just to produce electricity, but also to produce chemicals and materials from the syngas. So capturing carbon molecules and moving to green carbon molecules is absolutely on. The second target, the second way is to try to get more and more green, so non-carbon based energy. So whether it is hydrogen or it is batteries or geothermal, tidal, there are solar, wind, obviously, right? And so these are the ways by which you try to bring in primary sources of energy without going the carbon route, right? So a good combination of all of these and supported by great policy decisions, great incentives, is the most important task that India has to do. What is the most difficult task to do is to enforce this, right? And how do you enforce industry to stop using carbon and start using non-carbon fuels? Incentivizing is easy. Regulatory forcing it down is the most difficult task. Similarly, for carbon, it's good to incentivize the reduction of carbon or the capture of carbon, but very difficult to penalize it, right? So carbon credit is easier, carbon tax is very difficult. Okay, so a good choice of these kinds of policies and incentives is going to be the key for India to reach net zero. So again, I think I will conclude by just saying that when is answered, how is the more difficult part, and that involves a good blend of technology mix, policy decisions for incentivizing, and lastly, if nothing else works, then push it through taxes and forced shifting from carbon to non-carbon sources. And this is how it should happen. I think it's the same story for every other country, but keeping the India's growth in mind while aligning to net zero is going to be very, very critical.
Thank you, Dr. Lele. So as you've heard, there is this balance that has to be maintained between our energy demands, which are bound to grow based on as we develop further, and the fact that there is this imperative to change over to more green sources of energy. Clearly, it is policy making is involved. Also, on the technical side, Dr. Lele already said that there has to be some level of, it's not possible to avoid carbon altogether, and therefore there has to be a transition into more greener sources of energy and so on. So I think there is a lot to do if 2070 has to be really achieved. So on that note, I thank you, Dr. Lele, and we will move on to the chair of the second session, which was conducted on 22nd, which was on bulk chemicals and sustainable materials. This addresses the SDG goals 9 and 11. And I call upon Professor Pradeep Ramcharla, Director CSIR CBRI. The question to you, sir, is how, in your views, can cities be made more smarter? We are talking of smarter. We talk of smart cities, but I'm asking you the question slightly in reverse in terms of what that entire session was about. How do we make cities more how cities can be made more smarter, and how CSIR is contributing to the smart city initiative? So both ways, please.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So the main thing is this urbanization. So as you know that urbanization is increasing rapidly in almost all the countries. Presently in India, it is around 30% and 70% is rural population. But like going at the growth rate right now, because India is marching towards taking the position of third largest economy, and maybe further also it will go. So what is going to happen is all these cities that which are primarily contributing, major contribution for GDP is coming from that. So what is more important is improving the quality of life, and these cities are attracting a lot of investments. So now in terms of smartness, so what is important, like we need smart people, smart economy. These are smart city features. And then smart environment, governance, living, and smart mobility. So out of this, actually, CSIR is contributing to almost all these areas because with 37 laboratories, I'll focus on only 2-3. One is smart environment in terms of green buildings. So presently, the buildings, that is materials, processing of materials, construction, embodied energy, they are consuming and emitting a lot of CO2. So, like many labs are contributing towards how to reduce CO2, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And also this mobility, that is like how do we increase the mobility and clean and non-motorized options. And also another thing is integrated ICT development. And there are a lot of contribution is happening in terms of how these non-polluting vehicles we can create or produce. Then second is a lot of innovations are coming in this area. And as we know that infrastructure development has to do a lot with the major road networks. So new material, that is steel slag road has been constructed by CSIR technology. So many new technologies are coming up in these areas. So two things, one is people and infrastructure. So if we can convert these two smart, so people, definitely it is through education and inclusiveness in society, and also the creativity mindset has to be inculcated, that is in people. And city which is less consuming the energy, that is infrastructure. So these are my views, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Pradeep. So clearly, smartness is not just about people, but also how we harness the energy and how we create a good living environment, how we address the concerns of or how we build our infrastructure in a manner which is sustainable in the long run. I now move on to the co-chair of the second session. We have Dr. D. Srinivasa Reddy, Director CSIR IICT. And this question is occasioned by one interesting comment which you made in the session, which was that you believe that India has the potential to become the chemical manufacturing hub of the world. We are, of course, already recognized as a pharmacy of the world. So how and when do you see this becoming a reality? That's the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abhay. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. We can hear you.
So I can confidently say that chemical sector in India is presently undergoing great transformations, and many local players are turning to global. So India is already 6th largest seller of chemicals in the world. And as you said, as Dr. Abhay said, and also we all already know, India is a pharmacy capital to the world. Just to tell you that 1 out of 3 pills in India, in USA sold, they are made in India. 1 out of 3 pills. That itself is a big contribution pharmacy world. So I'm very confident that chemical industry also can script similar success story in the very near future. Again, I don't have a definite year or something like that, but very soon it's going to happen. So of course, there is a lot working in India's favor, like a geophysical scenario, for instance. So we all know that China is contributing a lot, and most of the world, in particular, all this European Union and USA are dependent mostly on China. And however, now the world is looking for shift towards, there is something called China plus one approach because of different reasons we all are aware. One is something like recently it happened during COVID pandemic situation, disruptions in supply chain, and also there's some kind of tensions between West and China. These all favored our, like, basically everything turned towards India. India is become obvious choice. That is, we are ready to fill the gap. And of course, India's, in addition to this, India's strengths in process engineering and low-cost manufacturing capabilities and abundant skilled manpower make India an attractive destination for manufacturing and sourcing hub in the future. Accordingly, many of our local players are turning to global, and particularly driven by government recent initiatives like a PLI, that is a product linked incentive scheme. That is one of the popular scheme now. It's becoming more popular. And also government also made substantial improvements in its policies and regulatory environment, making it easier. And of course, I'm not telling that completely becoming easy, but definitely easier than previous years, previous decades, to establish enterprises to come and establish themselves and flourish here. So there are also some challenges in India, of course, not only for India, many other places also. Sustainability today has become a key business differentiator. I think that's where we need to focus, and also over dependence on China for raw materials. The chemical sector still imports about 50% of basic chemicals and intermediates from China. Therefore, an immediate need is to invest in our country to backward integration on these raw materials. I'm sure we'll be able to address some of these issues, and it's going to be reality soon that India will be soon sought after place for all chemicals, and India is going to be a manufacturing hub of chemicals in the very near future. Thank you, Dr. Abhay.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. So I think you have convinced me certainly that India always had the potential, but now due to certain events in the recent past, that potential has been recognized, and also the Indian industry is now having the ambition, as you rightly said, not only produce for the country, but also to produce for the world. So let us hope all of that happens, and I'm sure the policy, what you mentioned, the performance linked incentive, as well as the broad push for Atmanirbhar will certainly, help in realizing that dream. So thank you again, and I now move on to the third session. Chair Dr. Atul Vaidya, Director CSIR NEERI, and this session was on exploitation and sustainable unearthing of treasures. Certainly a matter of great interest for everybody who is into prospecting. And so my question, therefore, Dr. Vaidya, to you is, how can circular economy approaches eliminate these problems which are associated with the exploitation of natural resources?
Thank you, Dr. Abhay. Am I audible?
Yes, certainly. Please go ahead.
So it's a good question, but it's not as innocent as it appears, this question. So it has many angles to be looked into. First thing is that India is a highly populous country, and use of resources or exploitation of the resources is for sustenance of the life, not always for the luxury. So that is the first thing which we have to look into. Number two, there is a long value chain process in resource utilization. If you look at any resource, whether it is material or anything like that, so resource extraction is one thing, then resource storage, then resource refining for the utilization, and finally utilization of the resource. And then resource gets converted to product. And considering the thermodynamic improbability of wasteless processes, most of the times and due to scale of the operations, we inevitably generate a lot of waste when we utilize resource. So ultimately, it appears that resource is getting irreversibly converted to product and waste. And definitely, circular economy, in principle, approves the conversion of the product or waste back to the resource. So therefore, if you really get into the principles of circular economy, then definitely it will help in resource conservation and reduce the problems associated with the resource utilization. Now, the problems associated with the resource utilization or resource extraction is basically related to application of the non-efficient processes, number one, or non-eco-friendly processes. And a lot of energy is also consumed in those things. Of course, when we say circular economy, now from my point of view, it should be, if I look it as an environmentalist, it should not be economy, it should be resource driven. But normally economy means whether it is upscaling or downscaling in circular economy. Either way, we are worried about economy rather than we are worried about the resource conservation or the utilization. So that is but that is a good start to beginning. It will be always some economic incentive which will trigger the use of circular economy principles. But then we should be cautious in certain things. One is that resource or the circular economy should put the waste or the product back to the same process. Most of the times we see that it is either put into some different process, which again goes to irreversibility, or upscaling also from economic point of view. So preferably it should be getting into the same process where from the resource has been utilized. Number two, even converting waste and product back to resource, you need a lot of energy and you will have some environmental impacts. Now, these are to be compared with the basic impacts or energy consumption, which is actually you have spent on the resource extraction from the natural source. Now, if this balance is there, or if this circular economy of the putting back product back to the source, if this is less than the actual exploitation of the resource, definitely we should circular economy will definitely help, and it will help reduce the environmental issues, reduce energy issues, and even to some extent it will go for resource conservation. But my viewpoint here is that initially it's good to focus on economy, but then we should have preferences for the resources which are really precious or which are depleting or which are rarely available. So we should give more focus on such resource and circular economies associated with that. Number two, our basic problems are of overexploitation and non-eco-friendly methods. So we should do some research on it. Of course, all CSR laboratories are working indirectly or directly on these issues. Most important thing which all of us should focus is the life cycle assessment of any circular economy. If you really want to get into the resource kind of thing, unless you do life cycle assessment of the total entire thing, we are not giving a clear picture. But in the beginning, yes, circular economy will definitely help for initial beginning towards the resource conservation and reducing the environmental and energy issues. How to implement is that we should have preferences towards the resources that we have to identify, and there has to be regulation. Incentive, as Dr. Ashish said, giving incentives is very easy, but putting regulation into practice and putting some taxes, it's very difficult. But then someday we have to practice that. So these are my basic views on the questions which you have put forward me. Definitely, it's not a very easy question to answer as it appears, but then I tried to be on basic things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vaidya. So I think you have very clearly brought out this tension always, which is between livelihoods and the other side of conserving the environment and so on. And I think you've very rightly said that very rare materials, minerals are ones probably which should be first looked at seriously from the circular economy point of view. And then we can look at those which are a little more abundant and things like that. So I think that's a very reasonable point of view. Thank you very much for that. So before I go on to the other panelists, session 4 and 5, probably we should just check if we have Professor Gupta there from the World Academy of Sciences Council.
Yes, I'm there.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. So you've been, I'm sure, attending all these sessions, and therefore I have a question for you as well. Sure. So how, in your view, can the CSIR and the World Academy of Sciences, which you represent, collaborate, and what role we can play in promoting and building scientific capacity and excellence for the advancement of science, not just in India, but globally? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Mashelkar. I am Pashelkar. I am actually representing the President, Dr. Qureshi, on behalf of TWAS. To begin with, TWAS has 5 major programs which are mainly targeted at technology and research advancement in least developed countries and science and technology lagging countries, SNTLC. And 5 out of these 5 programs, TWAS fellowships for research and advanced training, where we have the collaboration with CSIR. The CSIR collaboration is mainly aimed at pursuing research in these countries and awarding in the form of award of PhD degree in emerging areas of science and technology. The TWAS research programs or PhD fellowships have 9 partnerships from Brazil, China, India, Pakistan, South Africa, and Turkey. And CSIR is one of those 9 partners. So far, we have awarded around 2,300 fellowships, and at present we have 733 PhDs on site. Out of these 2,300, the total number of PhDs awarded are around 1,000. And out of these, more than 2,000 publications have come out, which are of great importance. The CSIR TWAS Fellowship Program had its journey in 1993, and so far 298 awards have been given to the scientists from the least developed countries. Out of these, 183 are PhD in the form of PhD awards, and 115 are as postdocs. And out of the 183 PhD awards, the women scientists are 37, and out of 115 postdocs, 19 are women. So I personally feel the representation from women scientists is quite low. And out of these 39% fellowships have gone to science and technology like countries. And the number of graduates so far out of these 292 are 80, which have given around 280 publications. So the success story of this program is, I can cite with one example. There was a lady from Bangladesh, Ashrafi Hussain, who joined as a CSIR TWAS PhD scholar in 2012. She was awarded PhD degree in 2018. In 2020, she received India Science and Research Fellowship in CSIR institution. And on the basis of her publications and research output, she earned TWAS research grant in 2021. You might be knowing the TWAS research grants carry about 20,000 to any amount between 20,000 to 40,000 US dollars. And that helped this lady to build her research lab and purchase equipment for her research in Bangladesh. Likewise, there is another success story of a student from Kenya who worked at CDRI, and he has become the member of the university post-study. So he has also excelled in his research, and he's now an important person in his country. Then there is another person from Cameroon, Negauno, who worked at NIRI, Nagpur, and as I understand, that he was indicated by his host supervisor as one of his top 5% students in the last 10 years. So this was the remark given by the host supervisor, and the research grants have been given mainly to the study in the field of medical sciences, in the field of environment, and in the field of water quality. So this partnership between CSIR and TWAS has helped the candidates from the least developed countries and build their research lab in their own country. That is what I have to say.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. So it's really heartening to know that from 1993, when the TWS has come into existence, there has been a great deal of work being done. And also, of course, we still have to be more inclusive, as you mentioned, with regard to women scientists and so on. But then those 3 wonderful stories you shared, I'm really glad to know that they're all in some way associated with CSIR itself. So
yeah, they were all in CSIR labs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Okay. So now I will move on to the other panelist. We have Mr. M.D. Khan. He is a senior consultant of the National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, NIRDPR. And so I would like to just pose a question to him. The institution is, promoting rural development in India. And as I understand, 60% of our population still lives in the rural part of the country. And CSIR shares the vision and objectives of NIR DPR. And so therefore the question is really, how in your view can both these organizations work together, now that you have heard all the initiatives that are going on within CSIR as well, for the effective social upliftment, especially for the underprivileged sector? Over to you, Mr. Khan.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. At the set, the question looks very small, but the amount of answer to be given is very large and voluminous. But keeping the time constraint, and I would like to restrict myself briefly with what is expected of you from NIRDPR, what NIRDPR can able to do. NIRDPR basically facilitates the rural development through research, creation of knowledge base and capacity building and trainings to all the rural development functionaries who are working right from the top level to the grassroots level. NIRDPR, we have heard with so many organizations doing many things. And definitely NIRDPR is always looking proactively looking to the various CSR institutions to collaborate with them and to work with them to train along with them the people who are in need of this training to transfer these technologies. For example, in this panel, Dr. Ramancharla is here. We have signed an MOU with them on 2nd of July in the presence of the Honorable Minister for the transfer and dissemination of the housing technologies that have been developed by CBRI. Similarly, we are trying to see that we have entered an MOU with CFTRI, there is also a CSIR organization, where all the food technologies that are there, which we want to take to the grassroots level, to create the rural employment through these technologies. Like that, apart from that, at NIRD, we have established a rural technology park wherein we have showcasing all the various technologies that are developed with various science and S&T institutions for the people to see and to adopt, and at the same time to train in those technologies so that those people can adopt it and make it their livelihood and entrepreneurship can be developed. This is the way how we are trying to, I think, collaborate with all the CSR institutions to take them forward. I think in the earlier speakers also telling that there is a lot of all are working in isolation. That isolation should convert into collaboration to see that the advantage of collaborating with NIRD is it is an all India institution working through various SIRDs at the state level, and we have the ETCs, Extension Training Center, all over the country, 37 are there. Like that, in every state, we have these SIRDs are there. At the same time, in every district, we have the rural institutions, district level rural institutions are there, which are the NIRDP's monitoring. So through all these institutions, what all the technology that have been developed by various S&T institutions will be able to take it to the ground level and see that this reaches to the common person for whom all these S&T institutions develop this technology. That's the strength of the NIRDPR. Second thing is we are talking about, when you talk about the CBRI housing, somebody was talking about when P.K. Das was giving his presentation, he was talking about these sustainable housing technologies. So yes, how much CO2 can be, I think emission can be reduced, all these things they talk. But the only thing is we are not able to push through this technology in the housing sector only because of one reason that was already told, that is SOR, not having the SOR rates for this technology. Where I am trying to request the CBRI, jointly there is a need to bring a pressure on the government to see that the SOR rates should come for this technology so that the people can adopt these technologies. We are trying to see that we are under PMG, we are asking the people to adopt these technologies and build their houses. Whereas in the same village, our school, our Anganwadi, our hospital is constructed with steel and cement. The people are seeing that, they say, your buildings you are constructing with steel and cement, you ask us to construct our buildings with this, and they are not getting convinced because our own buildings were not constructed with these technologies. So there is a need that the government should push the government institutions to construct their institutions with these technologies, adopting this. For that, the SOR rate should be brought into the picture and see that they adopt this, the engineers adopt this and construct it so that the people will accept these technologies. Till that time, I think it is very difficult to push this technology. Second thing is now the working group has a constituted Niti Aayog asking to give the ideas with regard to the further program of PMGB. There we have already, in the working group, we have made a present, I think recommendations are made. One of the recommendations is that a funding should be made in this program for propagating this technology, creating awareness among the people about the technology. Second thing is the proper funding should be made in this program for training the people under this technology, creating a technicians in this technology, so that what we are thinking of housing for all through this technology can be achieved. Like that, Trivedi was talking about your aroma, this thing. So they told that we have created so many entrepreneurs. But we are also training in this technology. But when the people, the farmers or entrepreneurs are going to the banks for financial assistance, and they are asking for pollution board clearance. And the CMAP says this will not attract the pollution board attraction. But still, the banks are insisting for pollution board certificate, and they are not able to access the credit to establish units, and we are not able to push forward. Of course, that 400, 500 all India, it's a very small number that we have promoted. If these hurdles which are there, we can address collectively and bring these hassle-free credit facility is available to them. I think reducing all these formalities which are there, I think we'll be able to push through what all the technology that are developed by CSIR institution can be able to push through and can create the, I think, great amount of entrepreneurship in the villages and avoid that what you call migration from the villages. This all thing can be done. This is in short what I wanted to put it. Second thing is, with regard to the availability of this housing material, which CBR had developed other thing. Earlier there was called a Nirmiti Kendras were there at every district. They have all become defunct. Can we, I think, revive these Nirmiti Kendras all over the country so that the material, construction material of these material will be available to the common man for constructing the houses with these technologies. These are my, I think, small submission with regard to how we all can put together, address these issues, and so that we can be able to achieve what the flagship program of the government to be achieved. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. So I see that you've emphasized capacity building at the rural level as well as employment generation. And it is really heartening to see that you are working at the really grassroots level, and that enables CSIR to really calibrate its technologies and capability. And it's also very clear that certain policy interventions are very important in terms of the working groups that have been constituted. And your inputs and the technology from CSIR, I hope, will go in long way in deepening and broadening these initiatives that we are taking together. So thank you again. We will now move on back to the two sessions that we had today, and we had session 4, which was addressing the SDG 3 goals, and we have Dr. Vinay Nandikuri, who is there as the chair for the session 4. My question to you, Dr. Nandikuri, is how can healthcare intervention be made affordable for implementation in the global society? So not just India, but the global society. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Vai. It's quite a difficult question in one sense. Healthcare interventions essentially require early predictions, vaccine interventions, family diagnostics, and targeted treatment. Each one of them is expensive in its own way. And however, I believe that in future, early predictions are likely to become more affordable because technologies are becoming cheaper over a period of time. For example, most of the early predictions come from genome sequences. And what used to be very expensive, almost $3,000-4,000, has now become something like less than $1,000. That is human genome sequence. And it's likely to drop by another 3 to 4 fold. So that will essentially allow better early predictions to happen for majority of these. We may be able to have genetic predictions, whether it is for cancer and some of the other things, which in itself actually decreases, quite a lot of problems. The second aspect is vaccine interventions. These are, of course, developed across the world, and the more people get into the game, more affordable it becomes. But it is also to do with some of the IP regulations, and if the IP regulations are relatively relaxed or relatively kind of made available to some of the nations which cannot afford, then one sense we can even decrease the vaccine intervention cost, or making them available to some of the nations which cannot afford these vaccines, so that they can be spread across. Timely diagnostics is, again, so diagnosis is something which depends on the demand, and diagnosis has actually, for example, you look into COVID, the diagnosis was at around 4,000 rupees, or approximately $80 at the start, $60 at the start, and by the end of it, it became less than $3. So it's directly to do with the demand and the number of people who are getting into diagnostics and making things that are relatively cheaper, the cost of each diagnosis to be cheaper. And so diagnosis cost can also come down if the more people get into it, and we actually start, not talking about India, but other countries like India do get into the game. The part is targeted treatment. This is where we already have a strong presence. A while ago, Srinivas mentioned that we are, quite a lot of us already know it, that pharmaceutical capital of the world. So places like, when we can actually produce drugs at a cheaper cost and make them available to the countries which cannot afford to buy the drugs at an expensive cost, that in itself will help. One thing that we have to understand is we are essentially a global village now. Availability, however, of the quality healthcare is still connected to the monetary status. But if you look at the world at large, infections that are there in one country, it doesn't take much time before it goes to any other country. What was in China reached US in less than 1.5 months, and reached us in less than 2 months. So it's pretty much moves around very fast. So we have to actually first recognize that healthcare is a global problem, and ignoring it happening in some of the developing or some of the poorer countries would have an implication to whole world, not to individual countries. So given this, developed and developing countries, pharmaceutical companies, researchers worldwide have to work together to address these problems and make these new technologies available and affordable for everybody. So all the stakeholders of the world need to realize this, and to make the healthcare affordable is not exactly something that we are doing a favor, it's a need of the hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nandikuri. So maybe you can blame people like us who work in the aerospace sector for the fast velocity with which the germs are traveling nowadays in the rest of the world. But again, thank you very much. You talked about diagnostics, vaccines, and early prediction, and as well as targeted treatment. I think it's wonderful to know that India, and CSIR in particular, has been at the forefront of adopting genomic technologies, gene sequences very early when it came up. And many of the other things you talked about in the pharma side. Of course, what you have said very clearly is that I think IP regulations need to be seriously relooked at if we have to build on the scales that are required to make it affordable. So I think that's the message I can see from what you have said. So thank you again very much. And now we move on to the last session, session 5, which was on rural development and traditional knowledge from hamlets to industries. And this was targeting the SDG goals 1, 10, and 12. Now I call upon the chairperson of that panel, Dr. Ranjana Agarwal, Director CSIR NISPER, to kindly answer this question that I have for you, which is that CSIR is already, of course, working towards improving the lives of common man through the various science and technology interventions. So how can this process be accelerated or scaled up for bigger impact or a larger impact? So not just in India, of course, for the rest of the world. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Pashilkar. I echo the views of the previous speakers that your question seems very simple, but to answer it's very difficult, because if we have known how to accelerate, we would have done it so early. Anyway, CSIR, when established in 1948, if we look at the journey, I think CSIR has always been, dynamic in its approach to address societal problems. It has always arisen whenever there was a need to fulfill the aspirations of the nation that we have seen. If we see in the last 82 years, CSIR has created a significant impact in the lives of common men. Be it in the field of food and nutrition, or potable water, or healthcare, or energy, environment, anything you say, even in inculcating the scientific temper in the society. So that's also important part of creating better human lives. So CSIR has contributed a lot in last 80 years. But 21st century, when we look at, it has its own unique challenges and unique issues. The expectations from science and technologies has grown, exponentially. Society expects a lot from science and technology. And when we say science and technology, we also talk about CSIR. So expectations from CSIR is very high. But I also see, in the present times, there are lots of opportunities where CSIR can pitch in and create a better impact on the lives of common men. First of all, talking from the policy perspective, if I talk of Science Technology Innovation Policy of 2013, very clearly it has a vertical integration of all dimensions of STI in socio-economic processes. So, and when we look at the present scenario, the government of India has created many programs, many missions, be it Atal Innovation Mission, Startup India, Skill India, Make in India, Digital India. So I think these kind of mission programs provide a very good platform to CSIR to pitch in. And, the technologies and the processes, methodology we have, I think we can integrate in much better way using these platforms to create impact in the society. Through this innovation, through these programs, we see that how innovation index India is rising. This time also we are at position 40. So which is, very encouraging, very enabling. So I think CSIR must encourage, build this innovation startup system in the laboratories, because we have so many ACSIR students with us and the young scientists, and we connect with the, industry. So this innovation culture, this startup culture, incubation system, we must, strengthen it, which is very important. Secondly, we talk about the population. So I think this demography also CSIR can utilize. India is the third largest, higher education system in the world. So the youth which we have and the new policy which we have, scientific social responsibility, this policy, I think we must integrate youth into science and technology policies of CSIR, because they can be the torch bearers. Because CSIR has 37 laboratories and let's say a pool of 10,000 people. But when we expand ourselves to the university system, higher education system, and to the youth, we can reach every nook and corner of the society. So they can be, kind of ambassadors to connect us with the societal problems and the solutions which we have. That is another thing I think we can utilize. Third, we are already working on the triple helix model. I think that triple helix model must be strengthened, where the industry, the research organization and the government working. And in the sessions, we have seen the strength of the triple helix model, how the translation commercialization has happened. I think strengthening the triple helix model and then moving to the quadruple model, that also we should explore, where the societal participation is very important. Nowadays, we are talking about, grassroots innovation, open science. So there should be kind of integration of CSIR technologies or CSIR expertise with the, grassroots innovations, so that we can provide better solution. We can provide sustainable solution, affordable solution. So I think this is another thing, and there can be hundreds. But lastly, I would like to say, we should do outreach programs very strongly. Our visibility in the society, society should know, all the stakeholders should know what kind of expertise do we have. And I think CSIR has started working in that direction. Now we very proudly say we have more than 300 technologies at TRL 6 and above. We have 82 technologies which can be utilized for societal benefit. So I think that kind of framework, if we have, and we share it with the society, showcase it, and invite the stakeholders to come and work with us for the welfare of the society. So these are my few remarks. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. So the takeaway for me was this interesting quadruplex helix that you have. I don't know whether it is the term which you have coined or it is something which is generally
it's being used in OECD countries. It's like they are involving society into.
I was not aware, but the very interesting point you made to get society involved. We keep hearing of this crowdsourcing and all of that being part of getting the rest of the world, or the as you said, the outreach going in the right way, so that you get feedback very fast and you can perfect your models, your approaches, whether for S&T interventions, as you said, you can correct government policy where required, you can fine tune it for industry and so on. So I think that's the kind of velocity of change, I would say, has to be speeded up. I mean, and that's what is required, and the startups are designed for that. And India, as we all agree, has this youth dividend, and probably it is the right time for us to utilize that in the larger interest of the country. So again, thank you very much. So from my side now, I would hand over to Dr. Rama Bansal. And if there are any other further questions from the audience, probably to the panelists, we could take that. Over to you, Dr. Bansal.
Thank you very much, sir. Can we check if we have any more questions?
No.
No questions?
Some comments, but no questions.
And maybe we would like to read out the comments, one or two.
Yeah. Please. Yes, Dr. M. Rai says very important panel discussion for the global innovation and sustainable development. Then Dr. Oyen from Mongolia says, thank you very much for sharing. A very big congratulations to India for great achievements. I wish you all the best in every success. Amazing work. CSIR TWAS is extremely honored to continue working with you. This is Christina. Yeah, these were the comments. We have a hand raised. We had a hand raised. Now we don't have any more.
Okay, so again, before I hand back for the final summing up to Dr. Rama, I would thank all the panelists who came on today and the very engaging discussion. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Rama.
Thank you so much, sir. Just would like to mention that this two-day event which comprised 5 different topical discussions, has encompassed many areas where we have the technologies, the technological strength, where a lot of partnership possibilities exist. We are already collaborating with over 54 countries at the corporate level, spread across over 40 countries, 54 agencies, 40 countries. And then the lab level collaboration is also very active. We collaborate for research. We collaborate for developing joint technologies. We have yet to strengthen our linkages for technology demonstration and deployment. So through this panel discussion and our 2-day sessions, technical sessions, we have tried to present, showcase some of our achievements and developments which have already been implemented in India, which we would like to share with other countries, our neighboring countries, the countries across the globe, especially where these technologies are very relevant. And those who would like to take the journey like CSIR had taken many years ago. So we would like to do that hand-holding, collaborate for capacity building, institutional building, or developing new industrial sectors, etc., etc. So thank you very much. I would just like to sum up saying thank you. We look forward to receiving your proposals. We will also be sharing the recordings of these 2 days sessions with our partners across the globe, also through our embassies around various countries, as also through the embassies of countries in India, in Delhi especially. And with this, I would conclude and request my colleague, Dr. Yetendra, to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rama. On behalf of the CSIR, I thank all the participants of our scientific session, CSIR India and Innovation Hub for Global Sustainable Development. We are confident that this informative and interactive event has been useful for the global audience. We welcome collaborations with our research and technology organizations, industry investors, and other stakeholders from across the world for co-development, deployment of joint programs in various industrial sectors. With this, we have come to the end of our 2-day event. I would also like to put on record our sincere thanks to our Director General, the organizing committee at CSIR, chairs and co-chairs of all the sessions, our speakers and panel experts for their efforts, talks, thoughts, and time towards execution of this event. I take this opportunity to express our gratitude to the organizing team of SSUNGA 78. I once again thank all the participants of our session, wishing you all a very good day ahead. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.
Namaste. Thank you.
Recording stopped.